ready, Judge, we can go ahead and get started with pretrial matters.
All right, thank you. All right, and my name is Crystal Luttrell. I will be your presiding judge today. And I want to confirm at this point that the plaintiff is ready for trial.
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
And the defendant is ready to proceed.
The defense is ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Thank you. I am in receipt of your trial rosters for each side, so thank you for that. I just want to confirm that you understand that this is being live streamed. Although, because of the nature of live streaming, it's possible that it might be recorded at some other end. And I just want to make sure that you understand and you approve with proceeding by live streaming today.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Now, in addition, the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs of the competition during the round to the extent that that can be done virtually. And I want to confirm that by your participating in the state tournament, you're granting automatic permission and use of any such photos by the Colorado Bar Association. So can I get each side to confirm that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. I want to remind you that no recesses, will be allowed with the exception of a potential health emergency, and especially not between the end of witness examination and the beginning of closing arguments. We've already covered that there's no conflicts or reasons to be biased in judging of either team, but if there is anything, please speak up now at this time. Any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules, and your compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. So at this time, I have your rosters, but I'm going to ask each side to introduce your team members, attorneys, and witnesses, and then I will proceed to swear in. So let's start with the plaintiff's side. If you would please introduce visually your attorneys and witnesses for us before we move on, that would be great.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Lily Mastrangelo, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, conducting the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt, and I will be delivering the closing argument.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Olga Rakhlenka, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers, as well as conducting the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Peyton Burnett, and today I will be delivering the opening statement, along with conducting the direct examination of Carson Dirks and the cross-examination of Schuyler Weirs. At this time, may our witnesses now introduce themselves.
They may, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Chloe Ells, and I am Dakota Weirs.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Mina Odell, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Rima Baisha, and I am Carson Durst.
All right, thank you. All right. And do we have anyone else who needs to introduce themselves from the plaintiff?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Rachel Kidder, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent Lush Fertilizer Incorporated. I'll be giving the closing argument as well as conducting the direct examination of Blake Doncourt and the cross-examination of Carson Durst. May my co-counsel introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Kenya David, and I will be giving the opening statement as well as conducting the direct examination of Dr. Devin Williams and the cross-examination of Dakota Weirs.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Landon Stuckey, and I'll be conducting the direct examination of Schuyler Weirs and the cross-examination of Dr. Casey Rogers. May our client representative and witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Elizabeth Peterson, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Emma Helgeson, and I am Schuyler Weirs. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel and members of the jury. My name is Esther Fan, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
All right, thank you. Any other witnesses for the defense?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Then at this time, I'm going to ask you all to constructively stand for the swearing in. And in an effort to maintain professionalism and uphold the code of ethical conduct during and after these proceedings, we're asking that all members of the teams, gallery, scoring panels, and teams shall be sworn in to the code of ethical conduct. So I am going to ask you all to, team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And I actually had a slightly separate instruction for witnesses. I think you all also have your hands up. So team members and witnesses, is that your affirmative oath?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
And then gallery members and scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Scoring panelists, do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
I do.
I do.
Thank you. And do we have any gallery members who are constructively present, acknowledging, of course, that this is being streamed? Okay. All right. I figured that was sort of a weird question. All right. Thank you. At this time, are there any preliminary matters by either side? We'll start with the plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has a few preliminary matters.
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, permission to have the stipulated facts constructively read into the record.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Granted.
Yes, Your Honor.
Any other preliminary matters by the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has a few more preliminary matters. Your Honor, the plaintiff asked that exhibits be shown by screen share as they are being authenticated by the witness, and but while doing so, they are not constructively admitted into evidence yet.
Okay. Any objection?
Your Honor, we request that constructively be kept out of the eyes of the jury until we move to publish.
Okay. Understood and granted. All right. So I will grant the request with that caveat that constructively the jury will not see these exhibits until they are published. Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff's next preliminary matter was to ask that exhibits be deemed published to the jury upon being admitted into evidence, whether or not they've been screen shared.
And what's your position on that for purposes of this competition?
Your Honor, we request that all exhibits are screen shared and shown to the jury, but we have no objection to them being immediately published to the jury.
So to be clear, once an exhibit is admitted and you ask to publish it, at that point, by screen sharing it, it will be deemed to be published to the jury. Is that what everyone's understanding is at this point?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so ordered.
Additionally, Your Honor, the plaintiff asked that timers are able to communicate using the Zoom chat feature to avoid any time discrepancies.
With respect to the tournament rules, obviously, attorneys may communicate with notes to each other if you're using the chat feature to do so. That is appropriate. Witnesses may not be using notes. So as far as witnesses, as far as reading, reports or anything along those lines, I would just instruct that should not be occurring through the Zoom chat feature.
Your Honor, my apologies. I must have misspoken. Your Honor, we asked that timers are able to communicate using the Zoom chat feature.
Okay, I understand, and that's fine. Yes, granted.
Additionally, Your Honor, we request that in the case that someone is disconnected from the Zoom call, they would be able to text another teammate so the situation can be communicated effectively and then text be used.
Okay, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, that makes sense. Yeah, granted.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff asked to reserve any remaining time on closing for rebuttal.
And yeah, that will be granted. I would just ask that you make a record at the start of your closing as to how much time you anticipate reserving for your rebuttal close, but we will go with the actual time used. So whatever is mathematically left over at the end of your closing argument will be reserved.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, any further records or preliminary matters that need to be made?
Yes, Your Honor, just one more from the plaintiff. We ask that all of these be extended to the defense with exception to any remaining time on closing argument being saved for rebuttal.
So as far as the defense, I'm sorry, what are you asking to get extended to the defense?
Your Honor, the plaintiff just asked to extend any of the preliminary matters we've had allowed into trial today, asked by the plaintiff, be extended to the defense as well, with exception to rebuttal on closing argument.
Understood. And what is the defense's position on that?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right, so ordered. Anything further from the plaintiff?
No further preliminary matters, Your Honor.
Okay, and then as for the defense, any other preliminary matters? Obviously, what we've just discussed has been deemed extended to you.
Yes, Your Honor. First, we request under the rules of mock trial that in the event of any technical difficulties, the time be stopped immediately and that time not count toward either side.
As far as technical difficulties, if they are defined as one of the team members or attorneys or witnesses getting kicked out or technologically from the room and unable to participate, then we will pause the clock and try to find out how we can get that person back. So I will agree to that with the caveat that any such timeouts will need to be resolved promptly and quickly by as expedient a means possible.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Next, there are two witnesses with the last name of Weirs in this case, Dakota and Schuyler. We request, when appropriate, to reference them by first name only for clarity's sake.
No objection on that. Anything else?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, if there are no further preliminary matters, we can get started. Is the plaintiff ready to give its opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you may proceed.
May it please the court? Your Honor, members of the jury, they kept it to themselves to keep it on the market. Lush Fertilizer, the defendant in today's case, created a dangerous, cancer-causing chemical compound called Drufo. They knew it could cause cancer. They hid it, and they sold it anyway. Now, let me tell you a little about the plaintiff in today's case. The life of an 18-year-old girl is supposed to be nothing but excitement, getting ready to move out, start college, and begin their independent lives for the very first time. And it was for Dakota Weirs. Not only would she be attending college, she would be attending Juilliard, the most prestigious music school in the world, on a full-ride scholarship. The members of the jury, this was all before Dakota Weirs felt her life slipping through her fingers. At the age of 18 years old, Dakota began feeling ill. Every day, sicker and sicker and weaker, and she didn't know why. But Lush knew why. At the age of 19 years old, after a full year of pain and suffering, Dakota Weirs is finally diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a specific type of cancer. How does a perfectly healthy 19-year-old girl develop cancer? We'll show you how. From the ages of 14 to 18 years old, Dakota Weirs worked a part-time job at a landscaping company where she was regularly in contact with Lush Fertilizer. Throughout the course of today's trial, we will present the following three witnesses to you. First, you will hear from Dakota Weirs herself, who will testify to the pain and to the suffering that she experiences. Every single day she has to live with this terrible illness. She'll testify to the fact that she doesn't know if she'll ever get to fulfill her dream of going to Juilliard, to the fact that at the age of only 20 years old, Dakota Weirs doesn't know if she still has a future. Second, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers, an expert in agricultural chemistry and toxicology, who will testify to her own study she conducted on the chemical compound Drufo that Lush put in each of its fertilizers. To the fact that through her research, she found that Drufo causes cancer, specifically in adolescents, like Miss Dakota Weirs, that Drufo causes cancer specifically in those who are regularly exposed, like Miss Dakota Weirs. She will testify to the fact that someone with the exposure level of Dakota Weirs to Drufo was 10 times more likely to not just develop cancer, but to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma specifically. Finally, you will hear from Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush Fertilizer who now works as a product development engineer at Terrace Greenery. She will testify to telling Lush that she had concerns that Drufo could cause cancer, and they hid it. Testify to telling Lush she had concerns Drufo could cause specifically non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and Lush swept it under the rug. She'll testify to the fact that Lush knew they only had to take one step. If Lush had baked Drufo as a part of the production process, it would be completely carcinogenic free. One step, and none of us would be here today. One step, Dakota Weirs would be at Juilliard, not sitting in court wondering what her tomorrow will look like. The plaintiff has the burden of proof in today's case, and through the course of today's trial, we will prove to you by a preponderance of the evidence that Lush failed to exercise reasonable care to protect the user from an unreasonable risk of harm, and to the fact that Dakota Weirs' damages were caused directly by Lush Fertilizer's negligence. And at the end of today's case, after we have proved these to you, we will ask that you hold Lush Fertilizer responsible for what they've done and find them liable for their negligence. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Would the defense like to present an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may begin.
Ruinous condition. Wrong conclusion. Plaintiff's counsel just told you a heart-wrenching story. It's always tragic when someone is diagnosed with cancer. But Dakota Weirs' ruinous condition has led her lawyers to the wrong conclusion that Lush Fertilizer is to blame. On the contrary, the evidence in this case will not show that Lush Fertilizer caused Ms. Weirs' cancer. Good afternoon, members of the jury. My name is Kenya David, and I, along with my co-counsel, represent Lush Fertilizer Incorporated, a company that has been dragged into this court not by Dakota Weirs, but by people with an agenda to monetize the public's fear of cancer by suing a responsible company who cares deeply for its customers and the environment. Members of the jury, a trial in this country is not about who has the best sound bites, but it's about seeking the truth. The plaintiff's claim is missing the most important thing: credible scientific evidence. We intend to prove to you that the reliable science says that Drufo does not cause cancer, and frankly, we may never know what caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Drufo is a product that has revolutionized agriculture in America. In bringing Drufo to the market, Lush followed the law. It tested Drufo. There were no valid scientific studies showing Drufo created any significant risks. That is why the Environmental Protection Agency approved it. This is a remarkable product, and not just because it fertilizes vegetation, but because it does so in a way that protects humans, not hurts them. You will hear today that Drufo, unlike any other product, stops dangerous nitrates from getting into our water systems. Today, we will call Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt. She will tell you that far from being a money-grubbing corporation, Lush donates 10% of its annual profits to charities and is working very hard to decrease the world's global nitrogen footprint. You will also hear from Schuyler Weirs, Dakota Weirs' twin. Yes, this is an unusual witness to testify against the plaintiff, But Schuyler is an expert in researching any link between Drufo and cancer, and she will show you that there is no such link and that the environment needs products such as Drufo. Finally, we will call Dr. Devin Williams, a PhD who has researched Drufo and will tell you that it was properly tested and proven to be safe. She will testify that there is no valid evidence, statistical or otherwise, to show any causal link between Drufo and cancer, because Drufo does not cause cancer. Dakota Weirs will, of course, testify, and we do not dispute the truly terrible diagnosis she has received. You will hear that after her diagnosis, she saw something on television about Drufo. Because of what she saw, she signed up for a lawsuit. But the most important thing about Dakota Weirs is that she wasn't just some casual gardener who only bought Lush fertilizer. She worked in the landscaping business for 4 years and handled on a daily basis numerous chemicals and substances. Which one, if any, caused her cancer? We will never know for sure because there will be no medical evidence showing what caused it, or there will be no testimony about the common everyday household chemicals she used. Neither she nor her lawyers looked into the myriad of other chemicals she used during her landscaping job. Plaintiff will also call Carson Dirks, a disgruntled ex-employee who was fired from Lush and broke her employment contract. It was not until after Dirks was fired that she alleged something was wrong with Drufo. Finally, plaintiff's witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, a horticulturist and entomologist, will bring a prejudiced viewpoint to the witness stand and rely on invalid and non-peer-reviewed facts about Drufo. Members of the jury, your most important task in this trial is to look at the evidence and apply the law the court gives you. That law requires a plaintiff to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Drufo is not just dangerous, but in fact caused Ms. Weirs cancer. The court will instruct you cannot be influenced by sympathy for Ms. Weirs or prejudiced against Lush. You must base your decision off of evidence and the law. This is why I can confidently say that by the end of this case, we will prove to you that Drufo does not cause cancer. We don't know what caused Ms. Weirs' non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and the regulators who were responsible for evaluating the evidence, the actual scientific studies, have concluded that Drufo is safe. At the end of this case, my co-counsel, Rachel Kidder, will ask that you render your verdict for Lush fertilizer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counsel, you may present your, plaintiff, you may present your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the plaintiff calls its first witness to the stand, Ms. Dakota Weirs. Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs.
Good afternoon.
Would you introduce yourself to the jury, please?
My name is Dakota Weirs.
Why are you here today?
I have non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and I'm here today because I deserve to know that Drufo could cause cancer, and I want to hold Lush accountable for keeping that information from me.
Ms. Weirs, let's start with some questions about your life before you got sick. Could you tell the jury about your life when you were healthy?
It was really normal. I was a member of National Honor Society. I was student body president. I practiced piano a lot, and I had a part-time job at Haven Landscaping.
Did you have any plans for after high school?
I wanted to go to Juilliard more than anything.
Ms. Weirs, I know this is tough for you, but I now have some questions for you about your cancer. How long ago did you get sick?
Gosh, it's been about 2 years now.
What were the symptoms that came with your illness?
When I first got sick, what I noticed was just how tired I was all of a sudden, which was so unlike me. And I just had these horrible chills all the time.
What were your other symptoms?
As I got sicker, everything just got worse. I would lose these crazy amounts of weight, but my abdomen would swell up to almost double its normal size. My lymph nodes would swell up, not just on my neck, but under my arms. And I would get these really weird bruises just from brushing up against things on my fingertips, on my elbows, just everywhere.
Do you have any other symptoms?
What's been the most unexpected to me is how hard it is to breathe sometimes. I mean, I don't do a lot anymore, but I always feel like I have to fight to breathe, and that just freaks me out because I feel like I can just never stop fighting.
How have your symptoms impacted you any other ways other than physically?
I mean, I've definitely struggled with a lot of anxiety, and it's hard to talk about, but I do struggle with depression as well. It's just really hard sometimes to, keep fighting when you're not really sure if you're ever going to get better.
Have you gotten any better over the past 2 years?
No. If anything, I've just gotten worse.
How have these symptoms impacted the rest of your life?
After I got sick, everything started to fall apart.
How so?
Well, I actually got into Juilliard on a full ride scholarship, and I had to give that up because I'm so sick. And I think that was one of the most painful conversations I've ever had to have because for a little bit, I had everything I'd ever wanted. I was so close.
Let's talk about Juilliard a little bit. What did you hope to study there?
I wanted to major in piano, just like Nina Simone did.
Did anything inspire you to start playing?
It's definitely my grandfather. I used to watch him play when I was little, and he just always looked so happy when he played. And after he passed away, I just wanted to stay connected to him, so I started taking lessons.
Can you still play piano now?
No, I tried for a really long time because I didn't want to lose being able to do what I love the most. But now, not only can I not play, but I feel like I've just lost my connection with my grandfather all over again.
How has your cancer impacted the rest of your family?
Yes, it's been incredibly hard for us.
How so?
I've been racking my brain for years trying to figure out how to explain what's happened to us. But there's a concept in musical theory, it's called staccato. And the idea is to play a piece to sound very broken and shattered. And that's how I've come to think of my family. After my diagnosis, we just fell apart in every possible way.
Ms. Weirs, I now have some questions for you about your diagnosis. How long ago were you diagnosed with cancer?
It's been almost exactly a year now.
At the time of your diagnosis, do you know what had caused your non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
I had absolutely no idea.
So, Ms. Weirs, what led you to believe that there may be a link between Drufo and your cancer?
I was watching the news one day when I learned through a news report that there was a link.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
And response?
Your Honor, this is not by definition hearsay pursuant to Rule 8013, as this statement is not being used for the truth of the matter asserted, rather to show the effect on a listener.
I'm going to allow the question, and counsel may make further objections if it goes outside that stated purpose. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, would you continue, please?
I learned through this news report that there was a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
What else did you learn through this news report?
I learned that apparently Lush knew about this for years and lied about it and told everyone that it was safe.
Ms. Weirs, is Drufo an ingredient Lush fertilizer uses?
Yes, it is.
Were you exposed to Drufo?
Yes, I was for 4 years.
How were you exposed?
I had my part-time job at Haven Landscaping, and in that job, my primary responsibility was spreading seed and fertilizer, and one of the fertilizers I spread was Lush.
Did you confirm you really worked with Lush fertilizer?
Absolutely. The moment I learned about this link, I called my boss to confirm.
What did you learn from your boss?
He confirmed that I had used Lush fertilizer, and he also sent me a picture of the Lush fertilizer label. I think he was just trying to do anything he could to help.
Ms. Weirs, would you recognize a picture of that Lush fertilizer label if I showed it to you?
Absolutely, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, permission for my co-counsel to screen share what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1.
With the appropriate foundation, you may proceed.
Your Honor, if I may, it does appear that its screen sharing has been disabled by the host of this meeting.
All right, let's pause briefly. Do we still have our courtroom monitor? Because I am not the host, unfortunately.
Your Honor, I believe that her phone number is in the chat if someone would like to contact her.
I'm going to text her right now. Please bear with me for one moment.
Your Honor, may I confirm that we are pausing timing during this discrepancy?
Correct.
Yes, thank you.
I have sent a text. If I don't get a response within the next minute, I'm going to call.
So I'm going to go through and try and change the settings on the Zoom account. But in the meantime, who is going to be sharing the screen? I'll just make you a temporary co-host.
Your Honor, I will, Peyton Burnett.
Okay, thank you, Peyton. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, are we ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
And is screen sharing, does she now have host access?
So if anyone else needs access to screen share, just type your name in the chat and I'll let you do it too.
All right, perfect.
Thank
All
you.
right, then let's go ahead and begin. You may commence your clocks with the screen share.
Ms. Weirs, what are we looking at here?
This is a copy of the picture of the Lush fertilizer label my boss sent to me.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of that label?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, the witness has authenticated and identified Exhibit 1 as the picture of the Lush fertilizer label her boss sent to her. Your Honor, the plaintiff now moves to admit Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, we still do not know how the witness knows what this is.
Okay. Response.
Your Honor, the witness has laid the foundation that this is the photo that her boss sent to her of the first Lush fertilizer label she worked with. As her boss is the one that she worked with at the job, she has laid the proper foundation that she knows what this picture is.
I do believe that the witness testified that this was the document that her boss emailed to her. So it may be admitted at this time.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, what stands out to you about this label?
What stands out to me the most is that the word warning isn't anywhere on this label.
Ms. Weirs, do you see anything about safety on this label?
It does say user safety recommendations to wear protective clothing and some kind of mask.
Did you follow these recommendations?
Not all the time, no.
Why didn't you?
I started working at Havens when I was 14. And when I started working there, no one else followed these recommendations. And it just wasn't regularly enforced. And we all thought the product was safe. You know, if I had thought for even a moment that this product would cause my cancer, I would not have gone anywhere near it in the first place.
Why did you think this product was safe?
Because it doesn't warn you about causing cancer or any kind of serious illness anywhere on the label.
Does this label warn you about any physical ailment?
The only thing it mentions is that it could cause eye irritation if you get it in your eyes.
Ms. Weirs, do you see any mention of cancer on this label?
Absolutely not.
Your Honor, and Ms. Burnett, would you please stop screen sharing? Thank you. Oh, Ms. Weirs, we've talked about your past and we've talked about your present, but what does your future look like for you now?
I still love thinking about my future. But now I'm just terrified because Because of what Lush did in keeping this information from me, I don't even know if I have a future anymore.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination. And what is the stopping time for the plaintiff at this point? Sorry, does the plaintiff have a stopping time for their direct examination?
Your Honor, are you asking me or the timekeeper?
Sorry, the timekeeper. Sorry, my apologies. This is not being assessed against the defense's time. I just wanted to make sure I had the time.
Your Honor, the plaintiff has 16 minutes and 2 seconds remaining.
Okay, thank you. All right, now at this time, the defense may begin their cross-examination. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. I have the very difficult task of cross-examining someone who has cancer, and I would like to express all my sympathy for everything you are going through, but it is my legal obligation to ask you some questions. Let's talk about wearing protective gear when using the chemicals. First, your boss told you in person to wear a face covering when using lawn chemicals, correct?
He did say that I should protect my face, yes.
But you didn't do that, did you, Ms. Weirs?
Like everyone I worked with, there were times when I did not.
In addition to a face covering, you were supposed to wear long sleeves, pants, and gloves also, weren't you?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
Agreed. Please restate the question.
In addition to a face covering, you were supposed to wear long sleeves, correct?
I was, yes.
And pants?
Yes, I was.
And gloves, correct?
My boss did say I should technically wear gloves.
But you didn't do that, did you, Ms. Weirs?
If I had had any idea the product was dangerous, I would have, but I had no idea, so there were times when I did not.
Instead of wearing those protective gear, you chose to wear shorts, a t-shirt, and no face covering, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
Please restate the question.
You chose to wear shorts, correct, Ms. Weirs?
Like a lot of the people I worked with, I did go to work a lot in shorts, yes.
As well as a t-shirt?
Yes, I did sometimes wear a t-shirt.
And no face covering?
There were times when I did not wear a mask.
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered.
She may proceed.
Now I'd like to discuss warnings. Your testimony is that Lush Fertilizer should have had a warning on their packaging, correct?
Yes, they absolutely should have.
But isn't it true that other fertilizers and chemicals Haven used had a warning on the package?
Some of them did, yes.
And despite those warnings, you still chose to dress in t-shirts and shorts, didn't you, Ms. Weirs?
There were times when I did dress in shorts and t-shirts because none of the warnings were about cancer.
Furthermore, Lush Fertilizer did have user safety recommendations, didn't they?
Yes, they made recommendations.
You've seen the Lush Fertilizer label before, correct?
Yes, I have.
Who is screen sharing? Please direct your attention to Exhibit 1, which should be on the screen in front of you, and direct your attention to the user safety recommendations where it states, as with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask.
Objection, Your Honor. Cumulative. The opposing counsel is reading from the exhibit.
Overruled. This is for purposes of impeachment. You may proceed with your question.
Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment. Did I read that correctly, Ms. Weirs?
Yes, I think so.
And despite those actual recommendations on the label, you still didn't wear the protective gear in the face covering, did you?
They omitted warnings that their product could cause cancer. I thought the only thing I had to be afraid of was eye irritations. There were times when I did not follow all of the recommendations.
So you did not. That's a no, right, Ms. Weirs?
I did not follow the recommendations all the time.
Now I'd like to talk about all the chemicals you've been exposed to in your life. It is your expert, Dr. Rogers, a PhD in horticulture and entomology, not a medical doctor, who told you that Drufo was the cause of your non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Isn't that correct?
No, I learned of the connection between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma through a news report.
Let me rephrase that. Nowhere in your witness statement does it say that a medical doctor ever told you that Drufo was the cause of your non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Isn't that correct, Ms. Weirs?
No, it is not in my statement.
And you know that non-Hodgkin lymphoma is caused by environmental conditions, including chemicals, correct?
Yes, I do.
You've testified that you were sitting on the couch one day and you saw a news story about Drufo on the television, didn't you?
Yes, I saw a report about Drufo being connected to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And after you saw that news story, that caused you and your father to research Drufo, didn't it?
Yes, we were both terrified. We wanted to know everything we could about Drufo.
And after you researched Drufo, you contacted your old boss, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I was freaking out. I wanted to confirm.
You worked with numerous different chemical products while at Haven Landscaping, didn't you?
I did use a few other fertilizers, yes.
But you never researched any of the numerous chemical products you used except Drufo, did you?
My primary concern is Drufo because that is the chemical I worked with that has been connected to cancer.
You also never researched any of the chemicals you would possibly use around your house, did you, Ms. Weirs?
Like I said, I had to pursue Drufo because that was what was specifically connected to cancer.
But Ms. Weirs, nowhere does it say in your witness statement that you researched anything else except Drufo, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, improper impeachment.
Response.
Your Honor, I'm simply trying to confirm with the witness that she only researched Drufo and nothing else.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is using words that are not in the witness's affidavit, which would be improper impeachment for impeaching by omission. So this would be improper impeachment.
I think counsel is asking whether or not something is in her witness statement, so she may proceed with that line of questioning. Overruled.
Yes, Your Honor.
None of that is in your witness statement, is it, Ms. Weirs?
Objection, Your Honor, vague.
Let me rephrase my question.
Crazy.
You never researched any chemical products you would possibly use around your house or any of the other chemical products except Drufo, did you, Ms. Weirs?
No, I did not. I had to pursue this.
Finally, you only researched the company that you are suing. Isn't that correct?
Of course, I researched Lush. I had to find out more about this company that caused my cancer.
Ms. Weirs, my point is you didn't research anything else, did you?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
The witness may overrule. The witness may answer the question.
You
Yes,
did not
ma'am.
research any other product except Drufo. Isn't that correct, Ms. Weirs?
No, Drufo was my primary concern because it has been connected to cancer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Does the plaintiff wish to redirect this witness?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, why didn't you follow all of those safety recommendations on the label?
I was told that the absolute worst thing I could get from Lush fertilizer was eye irritation. I had absolutely no idea that this product would end up causing my cancer and ruining my life. So I just wasn't afraid when I was using the product.
Ms. Weirs, why did you only look into Lush fertilizer and no other company?
When you're in my position and you find out that there is evidence that a company whose product you worked with for 4 years has been connected to the specific cancer you have, I mean, how could I not pursue this?
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Right. At this time, does the plaintiff, may this witness be excused? Sorry, counsel, may this witness be excused at this time?
Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. Yes, the witness may be excused.
All right. She is therefore released at this time. Does the plaintiff have another witness they would like to put on the stand?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
All right, thank you. You may begin.
Your Honor, before I proceed, may I ask for a time check?
You may. What do our timekeepers have as far as?
Your Honor, the plaintiff has 15 minutes and 22 seconds remaining.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions before we move forward?
No, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Casey Rogers, and I am a professor in the Horticulture and Entomology Department at the University of California, Berkeley.
Why are you here today?
I'm here today because I have research and analysis on Drufo that proves that it causes cancer.
Dr. Rogers, let's discuss your educational background. Do you have any scientific degrees?
Yes, I have dual degrees in agriculture, as I have both a Bachelor of Science degree in agriculture and chemistry and a PhD in agriculture and entomology.
And what is your occupation?
Like I said, I currently work as a professor at the University of California, Berkeley.
What kinds of classes do you teach?
I teach several, but my favorite has probably got to be my food crops class, as I grew up on a farm, so that's something I've always felt connected to.
And have you conducted any research at Berkeley?
Yes, I conduct research on chemicals and their effects on the human body after prolonged exposure.
Where has this research been utilized?
My published research has been used in litigation, on administrative advisory boards, and it has also been used to make safety recommendations to companies regarding the chemicals in their agricultural products.
Now, before you were a professor, where did you work?
Before I became a professor, I worked as a research analyst for a multinational chemical company.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, testimony by experts, the plaintiff hereby tenders Dr. Casey Rogers as a qualified expert witness in the fields of agricultural chemistry and pesticide toxicology due to her extensive knowledge, skill, and experience.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, may I conduct a brief voir dire?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rogers. I'd like to discuss your profession and your education. You just testified that you are a professor in the Horticulture and Entomology Department at the University of California at Berkeley, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Dr. Rogers, horticulture is the study of what?
Horticulture is the study of agriculture, which would relate to fertilizers.
It's the practice of garden, field cultivation, and management, right?
Yes, that is correct.
And entomology is the study of what?
Entomology is the study of insects, but I'm not here to testify about that.
Right. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma is not associated with insects or garden cultivation, is it?
No, it is not.
Your professional research interests focus on pesticides and insects, correct?
I'm here to testify specifically more about pesticides, yes.
And the only current project you have listed on your resume involves pesticides, does it not?
It lists pesticide toxicology, yes.
And the only classes you are currently teaching involve herbicides and insects, correct?
Herbicides, which would relate to fertilizers, yes.
Herbicides relate to fertilizer, is that correct?
Yes, I would believe so.
But herbicides and fertilizer perform opposite functions, don't they?
Well, herbicides is about plants, and fertilizer, which is what I also research, would relate to that.
But herbicides are designed to kill plants, correct?
Yes, but as Drufo is a bonding agent and pesticide, this would relate back to that.
Fertilizer help things grow, and like you just said, herbicides kill things, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And lush, the product at issue in this case, is a fertilizer, is it not?
It is a fertilizer that contains a pesticide, yes.
Let's now discuss your education, Dr. Rogers. You have no formal education having to do with the human body, do you?
No, I do not.
You have not treated someone for any disease, and certainly not for cancer, have you?
I am not a medical professional, and I have never diagnosed anyone with cancer.
You've never treated someone with any disease, have you?
No, like I said, I am not a medical doctor.
And you have never had a single job relating to the human body, have you?
I'm sorry, I believe I did not understand the question. Could
You have
you?
not had a single job relating to the human body. Is that true?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
Let me ask that question again. You have not had a single job relating to the human body, have you?
Well, I guess you could say I have. As a research analyst, I conducted research on chemicals, and that could relate to chemicals and their effects on the human body. My current project on pesticides does relate to its effects.
Dr. Rogers, like you just said, those are projects. But my question was, you have not had a single job relating to the human body. Isn't that true?
My job as a research analyst would have, yes.
You are a research analyst?
My past job as a research analyst.
Okay. Although your PhD allows you to be called a doctor, your PhD involves, like you said, gardening and insects, right?
I'm here to testify about fertilizers and gardening, yes.
And finally, your curriculum vitae indicates no knowledge, experience, skill, training, or education relating to the human body. Isn't that true?
Like I said, I am not a medical doctor, and I'm not here to testify to that.
And just for a brief timeout, I saw some timekeeping just come through, just for the record, when we're in voir dire by the other side, that is not being assessed against the plaintiff's time. So have the timekeepers been tracking that?
I have, Your Honor.
Okay, all right, thank you. You may proceed, sorry.
Your Honor, based on Dr. Rogers' lack of knowledge, experience, skill, training, and education, Lush Fertilizer objects to her being received as an expert in agriculture and pesticides, as anything related to the human body is far too complex a subject for someone who has simply read about it like Dr. Rogers to render professional opinions in this court.
In response by the plaintiff.
Your Honor, the plaintiff does not tender Dr. Casey Rogers in any field related to medicine, nor the human body. Rather, we are tendering Dr. Casey Rogers in agricultural chemistry, which she does have experience and education in, as well as pesticide toxicology, which she has experience in due to her projects.
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness may proceed and is hereby admitted as an expert in that specific area of emphasis.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, let's discuss your research. What have you focused on?
My research currently is focused on pesticides, but since it was released in 2003, my research has primarily focused on the chemical Drufo.
And what is Drufo?
Drufo is a bonding agent and pesticide found exclusively in Lush fertilizer.
Why did you first decide to start researching Drufo?
It is my expert opinion that Drufo was released to the market too quickly without enough sufficient studies on its safety.
So what did that prompt you to do?
This prompted me to conduct my own study on Drufo to determine whether or not it was safe.
And how did you conduct this study?
This study was conducted with 3 testing groups, all of which were exposed to Drufo in varying levels.
Let's discuss this study further. Would you tell the jury about the 3 groups, please?
Yes, my first group, which was made up of those such as farmers and those that work for a landscaping company, were exposed to Drufo over a prolonged period of time. My second group was made up of those such as casual gardeners who were exposed to Drufo on occasion. And my third group, which
Objection, Your Honor, narrative.
Overruled. The witness may discuss and describe her research, so she may proceed.
Dr. Rogers, please continue.
Would you like me to repeat, or can I just resume?
Please continue.
Why doesn't counsel respond with a question to direct the witness, since we've been interrupted?
Certainly. Your Honor, I apologize. Dr. Rogers, would you please tell the jury about your control group?
Yes, my third group was my control group, and this group was never throughout the course of my study ever exposed to Drufo.
Now, what did your study show?
My study showed that those that were exposed to Drufo had an exponentially higher risk of developing cancer types such as non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what did you learn about the occasional exposure group specifically?
Even those that were just exposed to Drufo every once in a while, they were still 5 times more likely to develop cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what about the prolonged exposure group?
Those that were exposed to Jufro over a prolonged period of time were 10 times more likely to develop cancer like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And in your expert opinion, what does this data suggest?
In my expert opinion, this data would suggest that those that are exposed to Jufro have an exponentially higher risk of developing cancer types like non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is what Dakota Weirs has.
Now, you brought up the plaintiff, and let's further discuss how your research relates to her. Did you hear the plaintiff testify in court earlier today?
Yes, I did.
And did you hear her testify about her job?
Yes, I heard her testify to working for a landscaping company for 4 years of her adolescent life.
Did you hear her testify about anything else?
I heard her testify that she was exposed to Jufro over a prolonged period of time, which, relating back to my study, would put her in my prolonged exposure group.
And did you hear her testify about the age at which she was exposed?
She was exposed to Jufro in her adolescence.
And in your expert opinion, Dr. Rogers, what is the statistical significance of the plaintiff's age and level of exposure?
From a study that I reviewed, those that are exposed to Jufro, specifically in adolescence, have also a higher risk of developing cancer, like non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And so, what is your expert conclusion in this case, Dr. Rogers?
It is my expert opinion that based on her prolonged exposure to Jufro, Dakota Weirs was 10 times more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And because of her adolescent age at the time of her exposure, she was even more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Is there a cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Hello again, Dr. Rogers. We discussed your credentials a few moments ago, but I have a few more questions for you. First, let's start with something that you just testified to in court today. You said that you conducted another study on adolescents and the relationship that they have in their exposure to Jufro. Do you remember this testimony?
I did not testify to conducting that study. I testified to reviewing a study that was already conducted. The study was from the European Foundation of Oncology and Environmental Science.
Okay, but just to be clear, you did not conduct that study, did you?
I did not conduct that study. I reviewed it.
Dr. Rogers, you have very specific opinions on how to lessen exposure to landscaping chemicals, don't you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat it? It was a little too fast.
My apologies. You do have opinions on how to lessen exposure to landscaping chemicals, don't you?
Yes, based on the study that I reviewed.
You believe that the primary exposure to those chemicals is caused by absorption into this, is caused by breathing in those chemicals, right?
Yes, exposure to Jufro would allow you to contract cancer because you breathe it in, yes.
And thus, you recommended the use of a mask, correct, for persons who are exposed to Jufro?
Yes, I would.
And you believe that the secondary exposure to such chemicals is caused by absorption into the skin, right?
Yes.
And therefore you recommended the use of gloves, gloves, long sleeves and long pants, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound question.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Please restate your question.
Dr. Rogers, you recommended the use of gloves, correct?
Yes, I would.
Long sleeves?
Yes.
And long pants, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And based on your study of Ms. Weirs, you know that she did not follow your recommendation on the use of landscaping chemicals, did she?
I know that she wasn't properly warned of the risks of Jufro, so she did not properly protect herself.
Do you say anything about that in your witness statement, the fact that you know that she wasn't properly warned?
Objection, Your Honor. Improper impeachment.
Response?
Your Honor, I was simply asking the witness if what she just told the court was in her witness statement. I didn't mean to impeach.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The counsel may ask the witness whether or not something was in her statement.
Yes, Your Honor.
Dr. Rogers, you just testified that you know that Ms. Weirs was not properly warned as to the side effects of Jufro, but that's not anywhere in your witness statement, is it?
I am not saying that because it is in my witness statement. I am basing that conclusion based on what I heard in court today.
But in any event, Ms. Weirs did not follow your recommendation on the use of landscaping chemicals, did she?
Yes, that is correct.
Further, you know, again, based on your study of Ms. Weirs, that she worked for a landscaping company, not Lush Fertilizer, right?
Yes, she worked for a landscaping company where she worked with Lush Fertilizer.
Right, but in addition to working with Lush Fertilizer, since she worked for a landscaping company, she worked with many different fertilizers and different products in her line of work, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So she was exposed to many different chemicals in her line of work, wasn't she?
Yes, that is also correct.
And you are concerned about many of these chemicals, aren't you?
I'm not concerned about them in relation to non-Hodgkin lymphoma specifically, but yes, I have been looking into them.
And you are concerned over many of those chemicals, aren't you?
Not with Dakota Weirs specifically, as she has non-Hodgkin lymphoma because of Lush Fertilizer, but yes, I am aware that there are other fertilizers that she used.
Dr. Rogers, if you'd please direct your attention to your witness statement, which should be on the screen in front of you. If you would please direct your attention to the bottom of your statement. Is that your signature?
Yes, it is.
And just above, do you say, I have carefully reviewed this statement. It is true and accurate, and it includes everything I know of that could be relevant to the events I discussed. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Please direct your attention to line 21.
Okay.
At which point you say, although I am concerned about many agricultural products. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Finally, Dr. Rogers, you obviously hope that Dakota Weirs wins this case, right?
I hope that Drufo is taken off the market because it is cancerous.
But you do hope that this case goes the way you think it should, correct?
Yes, it should go the way where Drufo is taken off the market.
Because if this case goes the way that you think it should, it will open the door to class action lawsuits, won't it?
Yes, it will.
And you will be an expert in all of those cases, won't you?
Yes, I will.
And you will be paid to be an expert in all of those cases, as you are being paid to be in today's case, correct?
Well, every expert that comes to testify in court is paid, and that's not the primary reason as to why I want to be here. I'm here because I am concerned with Drufo.
Dr. Rogers, I didn't ask as to why you want to be here. I just asked if this case goes the way it should and it opens the door to class action lawsuits, you will be paid to be an expert in many different cases as you are being paid in today's case, correct?
I am not here because I need the money. I am here because of what Drufo has done to Dakota Weirs.
Dr. Rogers, if you'd please direct your attention once again to your witness statement, which should be on the screen in front of you. If you'd please direct your attention to lines 19 and 20. And at which point you say, if this case goes the way it should, I assume it will open the door to class action lawsuits and I will be on the forefront of that battle. Did I read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Objection, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Improper impeachment.
Overruled. The witness may be asked about that statement, given that she has been non-responsive in her questioning. You may proceed.
Just to be sure, Dr. Rogers, I did read that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Right. At this time, do we have a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Dr. Rogers, why would you hope to return to court?
Well, like I said in my statement, I would hope to be on the forefront of a battle against Drufo if it does stay on the market. Like I said, Drufo has caused Dakota Weirs' cancer, and because of that, if it continues to stay on the market, I want to come back if it remains so.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. May this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, she is excused at this time. Does the plaintiff have any additional witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls its final witness, Carson Dirks, to the stand.
All right, you may begin. Thank you.
Your Honor, before I proceed, may I ask for a time check?
Yes.
Your Honor, there are 8 minutes and 56 seconds remaining.
All right, thank you. All right, plaintiff, you may begin.
Ms. Dirks, would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Excuse me, I was muted. My name is Carson Durst, and I am the lead product developer at Terrace Greeneries.
And Ms. Durst, what do you do at Terrace?
I oversee the development of our lawn enhancement products and fertilizers, but I also love making the best office playlists.
Sure. Ms. Durst, why are you here today?
I'm here today because I showed Lush Fertilizer evidence of a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and they did nothing about it.
Let's talk a little more about that. How are you familiar with Lush Fertilizer Incorporated?
I was hired by Lush in June of 2003 as an intern.
And were you an intern through the duration of your employment?
I was not. 3 months after working as an intern, I was promoted to a product developer engineer.
And while you were promoted, did you stay within the research and development team, Ms. Durst?
Yes, throughout my whole career, I was part of the research and development team at Lush Fertilizer.
And what was your main project while you were working on the research and development team?
So when I joined Lush, we were working to test the safety of Drufo, and my biggest project was to research a certain chemical compound found in Drufo called nitrogen phosphorus carbonate and its effect on humans.
And could you remind the court what Drufo is?
Drufo is a bonding agent found in Lush Fertilizer that contributes to most of the company's success.
While you were researching this compound in Drufo, did you find anything significant?
Yes, the first red flag I found was a study conducted by the European Foundation on nitrogen phosphorus carbonate.
And would you recognize this study if I presented it to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share to the jury, or to the witness.
Granted.
Ms. Durst, would you please identify the exhibit in front of you?
Yes, this is the study that I found in my research on nitrogen phosphorus carbonate conducted by the European Foundation.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, authentication and identification, the plaintiff now moves to enter Exhibit 3 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness has not testified that this is an accurate copy of that study she found. Furthermore, this document is hearsay.
I will, at this point, I will overrule in part and sustain in part. Counsel, lay a foundation that this is a true and accurate copy of the study in question. And at that point, I will allow the documents to be admitted.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, is this an accurate representation of the document you reviewed?
Absolutely.
And you found this document through your own research, correct?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, we now move to enter this exhibit into evidence.
Then I'm going to allow the exhibit at this time, and you may proceed.
Ms. Durst, what was significant to you about this exhibit?
When I researched this study, I found that nitrogen phosphorus carbonate, which is in Drufo, is carcinogenic, meaning cancer-causing in rats.
And did this study relate to humans at all?
In the conclusion of the study, it outlines ways that these effects on rats can be applied on humans.
And Ms. Durst, what did you do with this document once you found it?
I reported this study in my lab notebook as my managers were to review all of our lab notebooks and compile into their own report.
And was this standard practice at Lush?
All interns were assigned to document any findings they found in our lab notebooks. So yes, it was standard practice.
And was there anything else the company could have expected you to do with information you hoped to reach your managers?
It was not. This was the only thing that they told us to do at the time.
And do you know if anyone ever reviewed this notebook?
Presumably so, as I received an email from my managers on safety concerns that I found in my research as well.
Would you recognize this email if it was presented to you today?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 4 to the witness.
Granted.
Ms. Durst, what is Exhibit 4?
Exhibit 4 is a copy of the email I received from Lush Fertilizer's upper management team.
And is this an accurate copy of the printout of the email that you saved from Lush?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 901, Authentication and Identification, the plaintiff now moves to enter Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Any objection?
Your Honor, while this email is fraudulent, that is something we will prove during our case in chief. Therefore, we have no objection at this time.
Okay, it may be admitted. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, what stood out to you about this email?
This email mentioned safety concerns that I found in my own research, specifically how Drufo is reported to be carcinogenic.
And did you ever hear anything further about these concerns?
Yes, I did. I, along with the research and development team of Lush and the management team, were all invited to a meeting in which we discussed our findings.
Did you attend this meeting?
Yes, I did.
And who else was in attendance?
Much of my upper echelon managers were in attendance, along with the rest of the research and development team.
What took place through the course of this meeting?
Well, one of my coworkers, a scientist at Lush, reported that not only is Drufo carcinogenic—
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 801 D2, statement of a party opponent, specifically subsection 2, this would be statement of a party opponent.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Under Rule 801 D2, the party speaking must be authorized by Lush Fertilizer to speak on their behalf. In this case, we are given a generic scientist who is not identified as speaking to upper echelon management. It is safe to assume that that scientist was not permitted to speak on Lush's behalf, and therefore this does not fall under Rule 801 D2.
And is there an additional response for the plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor. Specifically, 801 D2D, subsection D specifically states an employee of a company, which goes over the authorization factor, as this was an employee of Lush who was speaking for the company.
Okay, I agree. Overruled. You may continue.
Ms. Durst, please continue.
As I was saying, this coworker of mine stated that not only is there a link between Drufo and cancer, but there is also a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is the type of cancer Ms. Dakota Weirs has today.
And from your observations, did your managers ever address this concern?
Yes, they did. My manager, who was present at that meeting, stated, "Let's keep it in the walls until we figure out what we're doing."
And was this the last you heard of the carcinogenic concerns of Drufo?
It was not. A conclusive report was issued by Lush to all of us at the research and development team.
And you observed this report?
Yes, I did.
What significant information did you observe?
I saw that further analysis would need to be conducted on Drufo in order to actually decide on whether it was safe to use in humans.
And did they address anything about how whether Drufo was or was not safe?
As I said before, they stated that further analysis would be required to make that conclusion in the first place, but the only thing that they mentioned in relation to anything about cancer was that baking the product in its manufacturing process would reduce any risk of any carcinogens in Drufo.
And from your observation, did Lush bake Drufo?
No, they did not.
Ms. Durst, finally, from your experience working at Lush, did Lush take every precaution to protect their users?
They did not. Neither did they do any further analysis nor baking the product.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
You may begin.
Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. I have several questions for you as well. Let's begin with your background. On spring break of 2003, just a short time before graduation, you still had not found a job, had you?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled. You may ask the question.
You had not found a job, had you, Ms. Durst?
No, I had not. I was still looking.
And you told your best friend, Charles Doncourt, about your situation, didn't you?
Yes, it was just us friends talking, and I just brought up that I hadn't found a job.
And Charles is the son of Lush's CEO, Blake Doncourt?
That is correct.
And shortly after speaking with Charles Doncourt, you were then hired by Lush Fertilizer as an intern, isn't that right?
Yes, I had applied and I made it, so that's how I was taken.
Within a year at Lush Fertilizer, your performance reviews were not stellar, were they?
After I had reported these safety concerns on Drufo, I had received a lot of pushback from my upper management.
Ms. Dirks, I understand that is your belief, but your performance reviews were not good, were they?
They had been plummeting after I reported my conclusions.
In fact, in early 2004, you were even put on a performance improvement plan, weren't you?
Because of these false performance reviews, I was forced to put on this plan, yes.
And then again in early 2005, you received yet another negative performance review.
As I said before, I had received a lot of pushback from my conclusions on Drufo and cancer. So, yes.
And you went to Ms. Doncourt to try and get her help in the situation, didn't you?
I did. I didn't know what else to do, so I decided to go to my CEO.
And when she would not help you, that left you seething, didn't it?
At the time, I was confused because Miss Doncourt was the only person I could go to, so I was confused and betrayed.
Ms. Dirks, I am using your exact words. You were seething, weren't you?
At the time, I was angry, yes.
And then you applied for a job at Terrace Greenery, Lush's main competitor, isn't that right?
They were a really good company and they had positions that I was looking for in my own job at Lush.
So you were hired at Terrace Greenery while still working for Lush Fertilizer, isn't that right?
I had applied because I thought I would get quit because I thought I would get fired due to my bad performance reviews. So I had no choice but to apply as soon as possible.
So while you were working for Lush Fertilizer, you were hired by Terrace Greenery.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
When you joined Lush Fertilizer, you signed a contract in which you agreed to wait 2 years after termination with the company to work for any competitor. Isn't that right?
Objection, Your Honor. More probative than prejudicial.
Response.
Your Honor, this goes to Ms. Dirks' motive for testifying today. She violated a contract with Lush Fertilizer, and she has a vendetta against Lush Fertilizer because they enforced that contract and had her wait in a settlement for 6 months before she could begin work at Terrace Greenery, and motive is always at issue.
Okay, overruled. Please ask the question.
So you did violate a contract with Lush Fertilizer, didn't you?
Objection, Your Honor. Facts not in evidence.
So counsel is asking the question, so overruled.
You did violate a contract with Lush Fertilizer.
When I had signed that contract, I didn't read the fine lines and I
Ms. Dirks, my question is whether or not you violated a contract with Lush Fertilizer, and you did, didn't you?
I hadn't mean to, but I did.
Finally, despite it being your job to look for potential dangers and risks, you were unable to find any studies that address whether Drufo might have any adverse health effects in humans. Isn't that right?
That's why Lush decided to do a secondary study on the effects on humans, but I didn't find any in my research, so I asked them to do so.
So you found no studies that address whether Drufo might have any adverse health effects in humans, correct?
I found the one that showed it was carcinogenic in rats, but not on humans, as that wasn't sustainable because we didn't want to use these products, dangerous products, on humans at the time.
Ms. Dirks, you were unable to find any studies that address whether Drufo might have any adverse health effects in humans. Isn't that right?
As I stated, I was not, no.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
You may.
Before I begin, may I request a time check?
You may.
Your Honor, there are 52 seconds remaining.
All right, you may begin then.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Dirks, why did you wait so long to speak up about the dangers of Lush?
19 years ago, I was an intern who found this safety concern.
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of cross-examination.
Response.
Your Honor, the witness's credibility and potential bias toward or against Lush Fertilizer was addressed on cross-examination, and I am simply recovering that bias.
Okay, agreed. You may ask the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
As I was stating, I apologize. As I was stating, I had found these safety concerns as soon as I got my job, and I didn't know what else to do other than to just report them in my notebook. But now, with so much more experience, I can confidently speak out about these claims that Drufo is carcinogenic.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, may this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any further witnesses for the plaintiff? Are there any further witnesses for the plaintiff at this time?
My goodness, Your Honor, my apologies. No, Your Honor, the plaintiff has no further witnesses, but before the plaintiff rests, we just want to confirm that exhibits 1, 3, and 4 have been admitted into evidence.
That is correct.
The plaintiff rests, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other matters to be addressed before we begin with the defense witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may, who is your first witness, counsel?
Lush Fertilizer calls Blake Doncourt.
All right, you may begin. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Blake Doncourt, and Doncourt is spelled D-O-N-C-O-U-R-T-T.
Ms. Doncourt, what do you do for a living?
I am the founder and chief executive officer of Lush Fertilizer.
When did you found Lush?
About 22 years now. Time really does fly.
Ms. Doncourt, as you know, Lush Fertilizer is the defendant in this case. What would you like the jury to know about your company?
While we are one of the world's leading producers of yard and commercial fertilizer, I am most proud of our commitment to the betterment of the planet.
Could you expand on that?
Of course. We donate 10% of our annual profits to charities whose mission is to decrease the global nitrogen footprint. We also promote state and national legislation to educate people worldwide on environmental issues.
Has the company done anything else to aid in the environment?
Oh yes, we started our own charitable organization to help clean the most polluted areas.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, just as the plaintiff was allowed to tell the jury about herself, we request that that same courtesy be extended to our client representative and she be allowed to tell the jury about the company.
Overruled. You may ask foundation questions.
Has Lush Fertilizer done anything else to aid in the environment?
Yes, we started our own charitable organization to help clean the most polluted areas of the Earth's oceans.
Has the company ever been recognized for its work in the environment?
We have received many awards for our humanitarian work, including the Seal Business Sustainability Awards. I was also nominated for the United Nations Champions of the Earth Award in 2020.
Ms. Doncourt, as you know, the plaintiff is claiming that Lush Fertilizer caused her non-Hodgkin lymphoma. How do you respond to that?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel is testifying.
Sustained. Please, counsel, make sure that you're focusing on asking the witness questions. You may ask your next question.
Ms. Doncourt, do you have any response to Ms. Weirs' claim in this trial?
First of all, I am deeply sorry Ms. Weirs has developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma. I sincerely hope that she recovers quickly. I do understand that people often want to find someone to blame and seek justice, but no one knows Lush Fertilizer better than myself. And I know that Ms. Weirs' claim is—
Objection, Your Honor. Narrative.
Overruled.
Ms. Doncourt, you were telling us about your beliefs about this claim?
Yes, Ms. Weirs' claim is mistaken, as I know my company better than anybody else, and I know that we tested our product and we found it to be safe.
Could you please explain for the jury the basis for your belief that Lush Fertilizer products are safe?
We had done extensive research and testing on our products before releasing them to the market. Our goal is to help people, not harm them. And we were very careful to make sure our products would not be a risk to people coming into contact with it.
Does this research and testing have anything to do with why this product does not have a warning label on it?
Objection, Your Honor. Leading.
Response?
Your Honor, I am simply asking the witness if she believes this testing has anything to do with why the product doesn't have a warning label, which is something opposing counsel has brought up numerous times.
I will overrule the objection on the basis that it does not suggest the answer. You may ask the question.
Ms. Johncourt, does this research and testing have anything to do with why your product does not have a warning label?
Yes, because there is little to no risk to people using our products. Under federal and state law, there was no requirement for a warning label.
Do you have any other reasons for your belief that Lush fertilizer does not cause cancer?
I do. During the testing period, our toxicology research and development team found no significant levels of toxicity, nor did the EPA.
Is there any research showing some sort of associated risk with using your product?
The only thing I'm aware of is what you heard today from Dr. Rogers. During the testing period, I had never heard of such a study, nor have I heard of any sort of study until today's trial.
To your knowledge, are there some chemicals that cause cancer?
Some can, but not all of them do. And Ms. Weirs has testified to using all sorts of different products.
Do you hold any ill will towards Ms. Weirs because of this lawsuit?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance. The witness's feelings toward the plaintiff do not make any fact in this case more or less probable.
Response, counsel.
Your Honor, it is our position that Ms. Weirs did not sign up for this lawsuit out of greed, but however, she was dragged into this lawsuit by her attorneys. We would just like to express that position through our witness.
I think that I'm going to sustain this objection. The defendant's personal feelings I'm going to overrule, or I'm going to sustain it on relevance grounds. You may continue.
Ms. Johncourt, would you do anything if Drufo was at all dangerous?
I would, of course, put warning labels on all of our products immediately.
You heard Carson Dirks testify that there were some potential dangers to using Drufo. How do you respond to that?
Objection, Your Honor, counsel is testifying.
I'm overruled. That was part of the question. You may ask the question.
Yes, Your Honor.
How do you respond to Ms. Dirks' claim that Lush knew about some potential dangers to using Drufo?
Ms. Durst only brought these claims up after she was fired and began working for our biggest competitor. Lush Fertilizer was never aware of any risk because there is no risk.
What about that email she produced?
That email is completely fraudulent. I never received it. In fact, we let Ms. Weir's lawyers have access to our entire email system, and they found nothing.
While Ms. Durst was working for Lush Fertilizer, did she ever approach you about any concerns she had?
Not once. And it was her job on the research and development team to look for and report dangers or risks.
Now let's address the issue of how Lush is made. You've heard that if Lush baked its fertilizer, it would be safer. How do you respond to that?
It is true that we don't bake our products, and cost happens to be a reason because Lush Fertilizer is a business.
But would baking the fertilizer make it any safer?
No, it wouldn't make any measurable difference according to our data.
Finally, Ms. Doncourt, what are you asking of this jury?
Although I feel terrible about Ms. Weir's illness, in a court of law, the truth should matter. And the truth is, there is no evidence that Lush Fertilizer caused Ms. Weir's cancer. I ask the jury to give my corporation the same consideration as the plaintiff.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may begin.
Good afternoon, Ms. Doncourt.
Good afternoon.
I'm going to start by asking you some simple questions about your company. Now, you're the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes.
The face of your company?
Yes.
And your company's reputation is at stake in today's case, isn't that right?
I suppose so.
Is that a yes, Ms. Doncourt?
It is.
Your company's financial well-being, even, correct?
Well, of course, but, since my...
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I heard a yes. So now, Lush Fertilizer used to be a relatively new company, correct?
I'm sorry, can you say that again?
Ms. Doncourt, Lush Fertilizer used to be a relatively new company, correct?
All companies used to be a relatively new company, so yes.
In fact, Lush Fertilizer was so new, it had to be set up using venture capitalists, correct?
Well, most companies, they start out using investors. So yes, just like most companies, we started out with investors, yes.
You tend to think of them as vulture capitalists, even.
Well, they can be demanding, and it's very important to give a good return.
Is that a yes, Ms. Doncourt? You tend to think of them as vulture capitalists?
I respect my investors, but they are demanding, so I suppose.
So it's your testimony today that you do think of them as vulture capitalists, correct?
I said, I suppose so, so yes.
Okay, Ms. Doncourt, now let's move on to your company's findings with regard to the safety of Drufo. Now, you testified that there is no risk to your products and your consumers using them, correct?
There's no reasonable risk, just like everything. There are certain risks.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I
everything.
heard a yes. And now this was based on different studies and tests, correct?
Yes, numerous different studies. We did
Different
extensive
studies
research.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt.
Objection, Your Honor. I request that opposing counsel allow my witness to finish her answer.
I'm going to ask counsel to please let the witness answer the questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, these different studies and tests were conducted by your own company, correct?
Yes.
No other independent studies have tested the safety of Drufo, correct?
There are a lot of people in our team, and they all did research and testing. So there were things that were put into the decision for whether.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I heard a yes.
So Your Honor, once again, I request that opposing counsel allow my witness to finish her answer.
Response, Your Honor.
Counsel, there's a fine line between a witness who's being non-responsive and then a counsel who's interrupting. I hear a lot of talking over each other, which is problematic from a court reporter perspective. So I'm going to ask you to try not to interrupt the witness, but I will caution the witness that she needs to answer the questions and only the questions asked. You may proceed.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Doncourt, before we continue, there is a limited time for cross-examination, and I'm asking you to limit your answers to yes or no. So the next series of questions I'm going to ask you can be answered with a simple yes or no. So now, no, the only people who've concerned the safety of Drufo are people who work for Lush Fertilizer, correct?
Yes, we did extensive research and testing.
Now let's move on to an email you received on September 18th of 2003. Now this email was from...
I'm sorry, I did not receive that email.
Well, why don't we take a look at it? Your Honor, permission for co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 4?
Granted.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, this is an exhibit. This email is from Jerry Langley, a product development manager at Lush, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt has already testified that she has no knowledge of this exhibit. She cannot testify as to an exhibit that she has no knowledge of.
Response, Your Honor?
Counsel may ask the question and then we will see what the response is.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, yes, Your Honor. Now, Ms. Doncourt, taking a look at this email, we can see who this email is from. This email is from Jerry Langley, an employee of your company, correct?
Anybody can put a name on a piece of paper and say that it's authentic.
Now let's continue looking at this email. This email is about the generalized findings that Drufo is carcinogenic, correct?
It is supposedly, again, it's fraudulent. I never received it, and none of my employees ever wrote this.
Right, now Ms. Doncourt, isn't that your name at the top of the recipient list?
Again, anybody can put a name on a document and say that it is authentic.
Along with 18 other names, isn't that right?
Again, with the names, anybody can put names on a document.
But now, Ms. Doncourt, 17 of those people on that list are not here today, isn't that right?
Yes.
17 people who cannot confirm that they never received this email, isn't that right?
Well, I suppose not. Nobody can say for sure if they didn't, but since I didn't receive it and my name is among them, I can say that they didn't receive it either.
Right, but now there's another name on this list who is in trial today, isn't that correct?
Yes.
That would be Ms. Carson Durst, correct?
It would be.
A person who took the stand under oath and said that they received this email, correct?
Well, I don't know where Ms. Durst came up with this, but I never received it. It cannot be accurate. It's not authentic.
But she testified to receiving this email nonetheless, Ms. Doncourt.
She did testify to it.
Thank you, Ms. Doncourt. I heard a yes. Now, Ms. Burnett, if you would please stop screen sharing. Thank you. Now let's move on to the issue of baking your fertilizer in today's case. Now you testified that your company does not bake any of your fertilizer, correct?
Yes, correct.
And now, if you were to bake it, you couldn't remove any risk of Drufo being carcinogenic. Isn't that right?
There was already no reasonable risk in our product, so baking was an extra unnecessary step.
But it could remove that little risk nonetheless, correct?
Yes, but there was no reasonable risk before it, so it just was not necessary.
Right, it would be simply overkill to bake your fertilizer, isn't that right?
Those were my words.
And now there was another reason you didn't bake your fertilizer, isn't that right?
What are you referring to? I'm sorry.
The expense of your fertilizer, you deemed it simply too expensive, isn't that right?
It is expensive, but I have plenty of money to support myself.
Right, now it being simply too expensive, by not baking your fertilizer, you could make a 6% yearly profit, isn't that right?
Well, I say that it is expensive. You can save that money. I would never do anything to put the public at risk, but yes, it would save money and our product was safe anyway. So that's why it was unnecessary.
But that 6% profit would go off to paying those vulture capitalists, isn't that right?
Like I said, I have enough money to support myself and my company, but yes, those extra profits would go to pay off different things that our company needed to pay off.
Right now, those people, those vulture capitalists got paid at the expense of Dakota Weirs and others like her. Isn't that right?
They did not get paid at the expense of Dakota Weirs because our product did not cause her cancer.
But Ms. Doncourt, you had a decision to make your product safer or to not, and you didn't, did you?
Before the baking, there was no reasonable risk. So like I've been saying, it was an unnecessary extra step. Our products were still safe and it would not harm the public. I mean, I'm an environmentalist. I could never do anything to harm my fellow man.
Right. She could have made it just that much safer, couldn't you?
Unnecessary step. It was already safe, but I could have chosen to bake the fertilizer.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Do we have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I get a brief time check?
Of course.
You have 19 minutes and 9 seconds remaining.
Thank you. Ms. Doncourt, when Ms. Weir's attorneys went through your entire email system, did they ever find any email resembling Exhibit 4?
No, they found no such email. There was no paper trail, not even a slight possibility that there was an email that would show that there was a risk in our product.
Objection, Your Honor. Unfair extrapolation. This is not in the witness's testimony or affidavit that our lawyers could have found any chance or reasonable assumption that this email could not be found. It was simply stated in the witness affidavit that our attorneys going through this email did not find it, and nothing further than that.
Okay, at this time then, I want you to pause the time and I'm going to read an instruction for our scoring jurors. And the instruction is as follows. You, the scoring panelists, are the sole arbiters of the dispute. Based upon your own individual observations, good faith judgment, and consistent with the intent of the judicial process, you may decide that A, there was no extrapolation, or B, the statement was not unfair extrapolation, or the question did not ask for unfair extrapolation as it was not material, or the statement was unfair extrapolation, or the question was asking for unfair extrapolation as it was material. The ultimate decision is in the discretion of each of you individual scoring panelists. Consistently with your decision, you may award one or more points, deduct one or more points, or take no action at all with respect to any of the parties involved. If you determine that there was no unfair extrapolation or that there was no question asking for unfair extrapolation, you may deduct one or more points from the objecting party if you believe that the objection was not made in good faith, was improvident, or was poor sportsmanship. Your decision is final. So at this time, we can go back on the time and you may continue with your questioning.
Ms. Doncourt, would you like me to refresh your memory as to specifically what your witness statement said about that email?
Yes, please.
Please direct your attention to your witness statement, which should be on the screen in front of you. And is that your signature at the bottom there?
It is.
Now, if you could please direct your attention to lines 69 and 70 and read those for us.
Okay.
Right here, Ms. Doncourt?
Yes. Would you like me to read it or?
Read it to yourself and then
Yes.
I can ask the question again.
Okay, I've read it.
Now, is your memory refreshed, Ms. Doncourt?
It is.
And what did you say previously about that email?
I said that the plaintiff's lawyers searched our email system and they found no such email.
Now, would you have baked your fertilizer if it was necessary?
Of course I would. I care for my fellow man and I would never want to harm another human being.
No further questions, Your Honor.
May this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you are excused. Thank you. Who is the next witness for the defense?
Your Honor, Lush Fertilizer calls Schuyler Weirs.
All right, you may proceed.
Good afternoon. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Schuyler Weirs.
Are you related to Dakota Weirs?
Yes, Dakota is my twin.
What do you do for a living, Ms. Weirs?
I am an investigative journalist for Rationalist magazine.
What is Rationalist magazine?
Well, it is a quarterly science education and science magazine that is published by the Rationalist Society.
And what is Rationalist Society?
It's a nonprofit that believes in real science and is against fake science.
Ms. Weirs, as you know, this case involves Drufo. Do you have any experience with Drufo?
Yes, I have written several articles exclusively on modern agritech, and I wrote about Drufo as a part of that series.
Please tell the jury what steps you took in your research on Drufo.
Well, over the span of a year, I researched publications that were issued by various agritech companies.
And then what did you do?
Then I tracked down and reviewed the research studies that were referenced in those publications.
And what did you do after that?
After that, I researched publications by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
Do you intend to render any opinions outside of the research and investigation you have conducted?
No, of course not.
Your Honor, based on Ms. Weir's extensive research and therefore knowledge, Lush Fertilizer offers Schuyler Weirs as an expert in the modern state of agritech, consistent with the court's pre-trial ruling.
Response.
Your Honor, permission to conduct a brief voir dire.
You may.
Before I begin, may I request a time check?
Of course.
Your Honor, there are 12 minutes and 36 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Good evening, Ms. Weirs. I'd like to begin by asking you a little about your experience. You researched modern agritech for less than a year, correct?
Oh, it was extensive research over the span of a year.
Ms. Weirs, you researched modern agritech for less than a year, isn't that true?
Over the span of a year, I guess you could say that was a little less than a year.
So, Ms. Weirs, are you testifying that you researched agritech for a full year?
Over the span of a year, yes.
But it was less than a year, wasn't it?
I'm sorry, could you restate your question?
Ms. Weirs, you researched modern agritech for less than a year in total, didn't you?
Over the span of a year could be considered as a full year. That's what I'm considering it as.
And Ms. Weirs, you also wrote articles on modern agritech for less than a year, correct?
That is regarding that answer under less than a year that's not found in my witness statement. Would you still like me to reply?
Let's move on, Ms. Weirs. Ms. Weirs, do you have any education in the field of modern agritech?
Oh, yes, I have extensive knowledge.
Ms. Weirs, do you have any formal education?
One does not need formal education when one has.
Ms. Weirs, I did not ask if you needed formal education. I asked if you had it. Is that a no?
That would be correct.
Ms. Weirs, do you have any experience going to college at all?
Well, I have no experience going.
Ms. Weirs, have you ever worked in any field relating to modern agritech?
Oh, yes, I've written articles about it, so that can be related to it.
However, you've never been in a workplace that was centered around modern agritech, have you?
I didn't need to.
That was not what I asked. I asked if you had. Is that a no?
Yes, that is a no.
And Ms. Weirs, Were you ever formally trained in the field of modern agritech?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Sustained.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, the witness has not portrayed the necessary knowledge, skill, education, experience, or training to be considered an expert in the field of modern agritech.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor, you held in your pretrial rulings that Lush Fertilizer can show that Schuyler Weirs spent considerable time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications listed in those publications, researching references listed in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and an ASDA. You held that such facts are confirmed at trial. They are sufficient to establish that Schuyler Weirs has specialized knowledge beyond that held by the average juror and will be allowed to testify regarding agritech under Rule 702. We have complied with your order, and Ms. Weirs should be allowed to testify regarding the modern state of agritech under Rule 702, consistent with the court's pretrial ruling.
The operative question based upon the court's pretrial ruling is whether the record reflects that the witness has spent considerable time researching agritech companies. Her testimony is that she researched them for less than a year. Does counsel want to lay an additional foundation for this witness to establish that that is a considerable amount of research?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
Ms. Weirs, would you please tell the jury once again how long you spent researching the modern state of agritech and DRUFO?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
I'm going to allow it. You may answer. You may ask the question. Sorry.
Ms. Weirs, would you please tell the jury once again how long you spent researching agritech companies and reviewing publications?
Yes, over the span of a year, I researched publications that were issued by various agritech companies, and then further I tracked down and reviewed the research studies referenced in those publications.
And what did you do after that?
After that, I researched publications by the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
Your Honor, having laid the necessary foundation consistent with the court's pretrial rulings, Lush Fertilizer offers Schuyler Weirs as an expert in the modern state of agritech.
And so admitted at this time. You may continue.
Ms. Weirs, why are you testifying on behalf of Lush Fertilizer?
I love Dakota. Her condition is terrible and has truly had a horrible effect on our family, but I would be a liar if anything I said or did pushed the idea that Lush Fertilizer causes cancer.
Let's talk about your research. What did you conclude about Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer has been the target of false science.
Did your research show why it has been targeted?
Yes, competitors are spending billions of dollars to destroy Lush's reputation because of Lush's patented breakthrough DRUFO, which threatens their profits.
In your research, have you seen these competitors' tactics used successfully?
Yes. For example, when Monsanto introduced GMOs and was on the path to eliminating malnutrition worldwide, a misinformation campaign tried to bury it.
Based on your extensive research, do you have an opinion about whether or not Lush Fertilizer is an environmentally responsible company?
Yes, I do.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. As we have already heard from Dakota Weirs in this case, she gave extensive research on her background. And thus Lush Fertilizer can use its witnesses to give background on the company as well.
You may proceed. Overruled.
Let me ask that question again, Ms. Weirs. Based on your extensive research, do you have an opinion about whether or not Lush Fertilizer is an environmentally responsible company?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
Lush Fertilizer is definitely environmentally responsible. They donate 10% of their annual profits to reducing nitrogen contamination.
Does Lush Fertilizer do anything else to help the environment?
Yes, Lush Fertilizer CEO Blake Doncourt also started a charity to help clean up dead zones in the Gulf of Mexico and other oceans, which are caused primarily by an overuse of fertilizers that don't contain an effective bonding agent, such as DRUFO.
Let's talk about DRUFO and its purposes. What inspired the use of DRUFO?
There is a huge nitrogen contamination problem in the world today, and that is what inspired the use of DRUFO.
What do you mean by that?
Well, elements such as nitrogen are essential for plant life. Weeds like clover pull nitrogen from the air and deposit it into the soil. No more weeds, no more nitrogen. Because the soil now cannot support the nice long grass.
Objection, Your Honor. Outside the scope of the witness's expertise.
Response, counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. Synthetic nitrogen is a fairly new product. As Ms. Weirs just said, grass seed companies are now forced to replace the real nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen. As this is a fairly new product, it falls squarely within her area of expertise, as her area of expertise is the modern state of agritech.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Your Honor, the witness is straying into agricultural chemistry and toxicology as she is speaking specifically about what chemicals can do what with the environments they're around. That does not fall directly under modern agritech, as modern agritech is the study of fertilizers, not necessarily each chemical component and how it interacts with the environment around them.
Council, please limit your questioning on this topic to the extent that it is in accordance with the foundation that has been laid up to this point. But counsel, you may inquire of it on cross-examination. You may proceed and continue asking your questions.
Ms. Weirs, why do different companies start using synthetic nitrogen?
Well, I'm sorry, could you restate that question?
Sure. Well, earlier you said that there's a huge nitrogen contamination problem in the world. Would you please explain what you meant by that?
Yes, grass seed companies are now forced to replace the missing nitrogen with synthetic nitrogen.
Is that a problem?
Absolutely, this is a huge problem because it leads to nitrogen contamination of the groundwater.
Does synthetic nitrogen cause any other problems?
Yes, it is also extremely harmful for the environment. Runoff causes dead zones, like the one in the Gulf of Mexico that's the size of New Jersey.
Is synthetic nitrogen harmful in any other way?
Yes, it also harms the human reproductive system by causing...
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of the witness's expertise.
Sustained. Continue. Please redirect your questioning away from matters of human biology and anatomy.
Ms. Weirs, you previously stated that you conducted research on Drufo. We know it's an ingredient in lush fertilizer, but what is your understanding of how Drufo connects to all of the problems caused by synthetic nitrogen?
Well, Drufo is a chemical used in fertilizer. It bonds to both the grass and lush fertilizer's active ingredients, which are phosphorus, nitrogen, and potassium, and prevents these active ingredients from being washed away as quickly.
What is the purpose of Drufo?
Well, Drufo is used in order to stop the nitrogen contamination problem I just talked about. It stops this through the fertilizer, which stays in the ground as much less washes away.
Why is it important that lush fertilizer's products stay in the ground for long periods of time?
Well, it means that these chemicals only need to be applied once or twice a year and not all season long.
Does Drufo have any other benefits?
Yes, Drufo also reduces the solubility of lush fertilizer, so the nitrogen in this product is way less likely to contaminate groundwater and waterways.
Is there anything else?
Yes, Drufo is also an effective pesticide, so lush fertilizer doesn't have to add any other pesticides, and this is helpful to the environment and protects us as humans.
Let's now discuss your research concerning Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. What did the research show?
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of the witness's expertise.
Response.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs was admitted as an expert based on her research consistent with the court's pretrial ruling. Therefore, excuse me asking her about her research falls squarely within her area of expertise.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Your Honor, the question called for the witness to speculate as to what she found based on the relation between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This would be going more toward physical anatomy, and if her research was containing this anatomy that counsel is saying, then she could testify to this if she was entered as such. However, she was not, and this is spanning outside the scope of modern agritech.
I'm going to agree and sustain the objection.
Ms. Weirs, why do you believe that the research on whether Drufo causes cancer is inconclusive?
Well,
objection, Your Honor. Again, this is asking the witness to draw a conclusion on the human anatomy.
Any additional response, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. I was not asking Ms. Weirs to render her final opinion on this matter. I was just asking her to discuss her research.
To the extent that you're asking her to make an opinion regarding cancer or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, the objection is sustained. Would you like to rephrase the question?
Your Honor, I'll move on. Finally, Ms. Weirs, based on your extensive research, do you have an opinion about the relative risks and benefits of Drufo?
Yes, I do.
What is that opinion?
I could find nothing conclusive about any risks. My study showed that Drufo most certainly does not cause cancer. However,
Objection, Your Honor. Again, the witness is stating an opinion on the Drufo's relation to cancer.
Okay, counsel, pursuant to the court's pretrial ruling, this witness was admitted to testify regarding the time that has been spent with respect to the research involved. So I would ask counsel to limit the question to the specific research that was done on modern agritech, as opposed to questions relating to medical diagnoses of cancer. To the extent that the research is summarizing a result in that regard, you may ask a limited question at this point, and then please move on.
Let me ask that question again, Ms. Weirs. What is your opinion about the relative risks and benefits of Drufo?
I could find nothing conclusive about any risks. Like I just said, my studies were inconclusive. It is clear that Drufo does, as it is an effective pesticide, it does prevent harmful chemicals from entering the waterways in our world.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Oh,
I'm sorry. Is that cross-examination? I apologize.
yes, Your Honor. My apologies as well.
You may begin.
Thank you. Ms. Weirs, I'd like to begin by asking you a little bit about yourself personally. Dakota Weirs is your twin, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware of your twin's unfortunate circumstances as she has developed cancer, correct?
Yes, I am saddened and I am aware.
And today you are testifying for the defense, correct?
I have to.
But that is a yes, you are testifying for the defense.
I'm testifying because it is.
Ms. Weirs, I did not ask why you were testifying. I asked if you were testifying for the defense. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Let's move on. Ms. Weirs, it's come to my attention that you've accumulated a bit of debt. Isn't that correct?
A bit.
And Ms. Weirs, this debt you accumulated was mostly from gambling habits, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. More prejudicial than probative.
Response?
Your Honor, I am laying foundation to establish any financial bias the witness may have in today's case.
Overruled. You may ask the question.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, I'll re-ask the question. This debt has come primarily from a gambling habit you have, correct?
Well, I bet on sports because I largely can't play them myself. And so that's my only real way of being in the game is to bet.
Ms. Weirs, I asked if you had gambling debts. Is that a yes?
No more than the average person.
Ms. Weirs, again, please answer my questions. I'm asking you if you have accumulated gambling debts.
Objection,
Is
Your
that a
Honor.
yes?
Asked and answered.
I don't believe the witness has fully answered the question. I'm going to overrule the objection. Please respond to the question.
Yes, I do have gambling debt.
And Ms. Weirs, is it true that your father was helping you pay off these debts?
My mother was.
And your parents are no longer paying for your debts, are they?
Well, after my mother died, my dad needed to use the money for Dakota's for her medical.
Ms. Weirs, I appreciate that you're trying to explain your answer. However, your directing attorney will have time to do that on redirect. I have a limited amount of time. Please answer my questions with a simple yes or no. Ms. Weirs, was it your father's decision to stop paying for your gambling debt?
I believe so.
So it was not your decision, was it?
I can't speak for my father.
And Ms. Weirs, are you getting paid to testify in court today as an expert?
Like all experts, yes.
Now let's talk a little bit more about your research. You researched modern agritech, correct?
Yes, extensively.
And within that, you researched nitrogen, didn't you?
Synthetic nitrogen, yes, and nitrogen.
And you researched that nitrogen is carcinogenic in people, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. Beyond the scope of the witness's expertise, counsel kept objecting to anything related to cancer or human anatomy on direct examination, therefore cannot question related to cancer and human anatomy.
That is true. Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Moving on. Ms. Weirs, you researched that nitrogen is harmful to environments, correct?
Synthetic nitrogen, especially the one that grass seed companies have to use to replace.
And Ms. Weirs, you also stated that lush fertilizer contains synthetic nitrogen, correct?
I believe so.
And Ms. Weirs, you also researched Drufo, correct?
Yes.
And within your research of Drufo, you found many studies about the safety of Drufo, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Weirs, did you hear Carson Durst testify in court today?
I was present.
So through your year of research, you didn't find the one study she found in 10 days that showed Drufo causes cancer, did you?
The answer to that is not contained within my witness statement. Would you still like me to reply?
Ms. Weirs, I'm simply asking if you reviewed the study that Ms. Durst brought to court today.
Why would I review her study? I thought her study was private.
Ms. Weirs, it wasn't a study conducted by Ms. Durst. Let's move on. Ms. Weirs, you don't know what other chemicals your sister was exposed to, do you?
She worked at a landscaping company, so she was exposed to a whole host of products.
Ms. Weirs, do you know what chemicals she was exposed to?
I can't name them off the top of my head. I'm not her.
So you don't know if any of the chemicals she was exposed to have a direct link to causing non-Hodgkin lymphoma, do you?
Well, she
Objection, Your Honor, beyond the scope of the witness's expertise.
I'm going to allow the question overruled.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Ms. Weirs?
Yes, please.
Ms. Weirs, are you aware, since you don't know what these chemicals are, you can't say if any of these chemicals have a direct link to causing non-Hodgkin lymphoma, can you?
Well, you can't say that they do.
Finally, Ms. Weirs, you don't know what else your sister was exposed to,
No, I do not.
but you do know she was exposed to Drufo.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Is there a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may begin.
May I ask for a brief time check?
Of course.
You have 10 minutes and 13 seconds remaining.
Ms. Weirs, why did your father stop giving you financial aid to help pay off your debt?
Well, Dakota's treatment costs so much. I mean, anyone who has had cancer can testify to that it costs thousands of dollars. So my dad had to use that money to pay for her. And I love her. And so I'm fine with that.
Does that fact or your relationship with your family have any effect on your testimony today?
No, of course not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. May this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, she is excused. Does the defense have any additional witnesses?
Lush Fertilizer calls Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. You may begin.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Devin Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your purpose for testifying at this trial today?
To provide the jury with the facts concerning Drufo.
How about you please start by telling us what you do for a living?
I work at Lush Fertilizer as the head of toxicology research and development.
Could you please tell us a bit about your education?
Certainly. I have a bachelor's in toxicology from the University of Utah, a master's in forensic toxicology from CSU, and a PhD in pharmacology and toxicology from CSU. I also completed a specialized post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Prior to Lush, do you have any professional experience?
Yes, after I got my BS, I was a toxicologist for the chief medical examiner in Larimer County. After my PhD, I became a professor at CSU in the School of Pharmacy and Allied Health. Then I became a professor at the University of Colorado in the school, and I was teaching toxicology and pathophysiology.
Do you have any current academic obligations?
Yes, I still teach at CSU, and I am also a professor of forensic toxicology at the University of New Mexico.
Do you have any certifications, Dr. Williams?
Yes, I have multiple certifications in the area of toxicology. I could list them if you'd like.
No, thank you. That won't be necessary right now. What has been the emphasis of your professional career?
Understanding how biological systems respond to environmental interventions, including inorganic compounds in agriculture-enhancing organophosphorus products.
Finally, when did you first begin your work with Lush?
In 2010.
Your Honor, Lush Fertilizer offers Dr. Devin Williams as an expert witness in toxicology.
Response.
Your Honor, the plaintiff makes no objection.
All right, so admitted. You may proceed.
Could you please start by describing Lush fertilizer, Dr. Williams?
Certainly, Lush Fertilizer does what its name describes. It produces agricultural products. Lush is an environmentally responsible company. The focus of my job is to keep Lush environmentally aware, to play a role in keeping the planet safe. In fact, I'm the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
Today, we will be discussing the potential harmful effects of Drufo on the human body. Have you ever done anything like this before, Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, vague.
Have you done any studies like researching toxicology of the human body before, Dr. Williams?
Yes, I am trained precisely to know how to tell if a substance is going to harm the average human and how to neutralize any potential harmful effects.
Why does Lush use Drufo in their fertilizer?
As we have heard, Drufo is revolutionary because it binds to the ingredients in the fertilizer and to the grass or other plants on which the fertilizer is sprayed. That way, less fertilizer needs to be sprayed and less fertilizer washes away into the soil.
Objection, Your Honor, outside the scope of the witness's expertise.
Response.
Your Honor, this is under the witness's expertise of toxicology. She's simply explaining what happens when products such as Drufo are not in the fertilizer. And under Rule 702, she has extensive knowledge and education under the toxicology.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Your Honor, the witness is testifying as to the effects on the environment rather than the effects that a toxin would have on the human body, which is what the witness has explained that their expertise is in. Thus, this would be outside of her scope of expertise of toxicology.
We're going to overrule the objection. She may answer the question.
Please continue, Dr. Williams.
I'm sorry, I don't quite remember where I was.
I will re-ask the question.
Thank you.
Why does Lush use Drufo in their fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer uses Drufo because it is revolutionary. It binds to the ingredients in the fertilizer and to the grass or other plants on which the fertilizer is sprayed. That way, less fertilizer needs to be sprayed and less fertilizer washes away into the soil, thereby interrupting the eutrophication process at the very beginning.
Eutrophication process? That sounds pretty complicated. Could you please explain that to us in layman's terms?
Certainly. Eutrophication is a buildup of excessive nutrients in bodies of water caused by agricultural runoff. Excess nitrates are the cause of eutrophication because unused nitrogen from fertilizers is converted into nitrates by bacteria in the soil.
Is that bad, Dr. Williams?
Yes, it is then carried into streams and lakes by rain and irrigation runoff, where it causes dense algae blooms, killing fish and harboring bacteria that is harmful to humans. The very purpose of Drufo is to stop nitrates from getting into streams and lakes, and thus helping to—
Objection, Your Honor, narrative.
Sustained.
Your Honor, let me break that up into several questions. Is that bad, Dr. Williams, that the nitrogen will get into the soil?
I believe you mean streams and lakes.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes, it is bad because it is carried into the streams and lakes by rain and irrigation runoff, and it causes dense algae blooms, which kill fish and harbor bacteria that is harmful to humans. The very purpose of Drufo is to stop these nitrates from getting into streams and lakes, and thus helping to save the environment and human lives.
Does the environment really need products such as Drufo?
Absolutely. Without products such as this, human exposure to dangerous chemicals will continue to get worse.
Today, we will be discussing non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Can we refer to it as NHL for brevity's sake?
Certainly.
The plaintiff claims her NHL was caused by her use of Drufo. What has your research shown in regard to this claim?
The use of Drufo has not been shown to significantly increase the risk of NHL or any other cancer.
Could you please explain that, Dr. Williams?
Objection, Your Honor, vague.
Overruled.
Could you please explain that, Dr. Williams?
Certainly. Some fraction of the people who use Drufo coincidentally contract NHL just as some fraction of the people who do not use Drufo coincidentally contract NHL. My point is that the science does not show a statistically significant difference between those two groups of people. The incidence of NHL in people who use Drufo and people who do not use Drufo is statistically similar.
Would you mind explaining that to us in layman's terms?
Statistically, there is no elevated risk of NHL for people who use Drufo.
How do you explain the testimony of Dr. Rogers, the plaintiff's expert witness?
First, Dr.
Objection,
Rogers
Your Honor, lack of
specializes-
foundation.
Response.
Your Honor, I fail to see how this is a lack of foundation.
Response, counsel. In what area is it a lack of foundation?
Your Honor, opposing counsel has not laid any foundation as to how the witness knows anything about Dr. Rogers or the research that she has conducted.
Sustained. Please lay the appropriate foundation, counsel.
Your Honor, if I may respond quickly, cases like these are battles of the experts, and therefore experts are allowed to give opinion testimony on other experts' opinions. Therefore, this is all right for them to testify as to the other experts' opinions.
Yes, counsel, the objection though is the foundation that you've laid for that. So please lay the foundation on how this witness is familiar with that research, and then you may continue along that line of questioning.
Dr. Williams, are you familiar with Dr. Rogers' research that she's conducted?
I am.
Do you know any of the studies or what they might have done?
Yes, I've heard Dr. Rogers testify today, and I have heard about her studies.
Then how do you explain Dr. Rogers' testimony? How do you explain her testimony in concerns to what you just testified to?
Objection, Your Honor, vague.
Overruled. You may ask the question.
How do you explain Dr. Rogers' testimony, Dr. Williams?
First, Dr. Rogers specializes in horticulture and entomology, which means plants and bugs. Second, Dr. Rogers looked at people who used Drufo in what she called a prolonged exposure, but she did not account for the fact that people with a prolonged exposure to one type of fertilizer use all sorts of products and are exposed to many different environmental conditions. Dr. Rogers' failure to do so makes that opinion invalid because it compares apples to oranges.
Is that all Dr. Rogers did wrong?
No, she did not look at the lifestyles of the average agricultural worker and the rest of the population. Not studying the environments in which they live contributes to the invalidity of those conclusions.
Do you have any other criticism of Dr. Rogers' opinion?
Yes, Dr. Rogers cites only her own research, and her study has never been replicated, which violates the scientific method. Furthermore, there are absolutely no other published studies reaching the same conclusion. Also, her work was not peer-reviewed, which is a hallmark of a valid study.
Today, we believe plaintiff will bring up on your cross-examination that Drufo has been banned in France. Do you know why it was banned?
Yes, I do know. And I would like to point out that it wasn't just France banning it, it was the whole European Union.
Why did the European Union ban Drufo?
The European Union banned Drufo because of nitrates, not any concerns about cancer.
Why? What do you mean the ban was due to nitrates?
Well, under the European Union's nitrate directive, no new fertilizer formulations may be used that contribute more than incidental nitrate accumulation as determined in lab tests.
Did Lush do anything to appeal the EU's ban?
No, it would have been too expensive a process for a brand new company. We decided to take out Drufo and our products sold in the EU until we finish a study that will show to the EU that Drufo will actually reduce nitrates in the water system. We are hopeful the EU will change its mind then.
Finally, have you formed an opinion on whether or not the plaintiff's NHL was caused by her use of Drufo?
I have.
What is that opinion?
First, I must express my sympathy for Ms. Weirs. No one should have to endure the things she has, but to a reasonable degree of scientific probability, Drufo did not cause her cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Before I begin, may I ask for a time check?
You may.
Your Honor, the plaintiff has 6 minutes and 27 seconds remaining.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
You may.
Good afternoon, Dr. Williams. I'm going to
Good
begin by
afternoon.
asking you some questions about your time at Lush Fertilizer. Now, isn't it true that as a research toxicologist, you work primarily off of data?
Yes.
And you believe that the best scientific conclusions are made off of the numbers, isn't that right?
Yes.
Yet, isn't it true that you often make conclusions that are based on things outside of your data sets?
Occasionally, as the need arises.
Meaning that you make assumptions, don't you?
I make assumptions, and if possible, I test them.
Objection, Your Honor, speculation.
Response.
Your Honor, the witness cannot speculate as to whether or not she makes assumptions, as she is the one that would be making them.
I think that the witness may answer this question, but she must answer questions moving
Your
forward.
Honor.
Go ahead.
I am objecting as to counsel is speculating to the witness.
I apologize. I misunderstood. Counsel, what is your response to that?
Your Honor, I was asking a question to the witness about what her conclusions are based off of, and there was no speculation that was contained within the question.
I'm going to overrule the objection. You may continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, let's move on to further discuss her time at Lush. Lush is the defendant in this case, correct?
It is.
And you've worked there since 2010, right?
I have.
You're a lead at the research and development labs, aren't you?
I'm the head of toxicology research and development. Yes.
So you've worked for the defending company for 11 years, haven't you?
Approximately, yes.
And thus you admit that you have a major financial bias in this case, don't you?
As an employee, I am paid to work at Lush, yes.
Is that a yes, that you have a financial bias?
I do have a small financial bias, but that does not affect the fact that I will tell the truth.
I did not ask you about how that affects your testimony. You have a major financial bias in this
Your Honor,
case.
asked and answered.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I will move on. Now, let's discuss the research that you have done on Drufo. Isn't it true that you've conducted a multitude of studies over the years on it?
In-house studies, yes.
Exclusively in-house, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Now, these studies focus exclusively on the safety of Drufo, don't they?
Safety, yes.
And none of these studies have been peer-reviewed, isn't that right?
We don't peer review in-house studies. That's not how it works.
Yet you stated earlier today that you believe it is a pinnacle of science that a study is peer-reviewed, didn't you?
If it is published.
Which none of your studies are.
Because they are in-house studies. You don't publish in-house studies.
So nobody outside of Lush has ever reviewed your studies, isn't that right?
I believe so.
Now, that means that all of the studies that you are discussing in court today are vetted exclusively by the people that produce the product, right?
They are thoroughly studied and thoroughly examined, and I believe that all the studies we have conducted are valid, which leads us to conclude that Drufo is safe. But in answer to your question, I believe that no one outside the company has reviewed our in-house studies.
All right, now let's discuss the results that you claim to have achieved. Isn't it true that Blake Doncourt is your CEO?
It's true.
And Blake Doncourt told you to find a way to make Drufo as cost-effective as possible, isn't that right?
Why wouldn't a company want their products to be cost effective? Yes.
Now, baking Drufo would reduce the cost effectiveness of Lush, wouldn't it?
I believe it would.
And exclusively from the in-house studies, it was found that you found that baking Drufo was unnecessary. Isn't that right?
I don't believe I'm the one who found that, and also that's nowhere in my witness statement.
Your conclusions led to the belief that baking Drufo wasn't necessary. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, Drufo does not appear to need baking. It is apparently very safe.
And by your own admission, any study that finds the result it sought out to find should be questioned. Isn't that correct?
That would be the suggestion of one of my professors at CSU.
And you believe in that suggestion, don't you?
I agree with my professor.
And isn't it correct that the only studies claiming that Drufo is not carcinogenic were conducted exclusively by the people producing and profiting off of Lush fertilizer?
I believe so.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Redirect examination.
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Does the defense have any further, or first of all, is this witness released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further witnesses for the defense?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Are parties ready for closing arguments at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, plaintiff may begin.
May it please the court?
You may begin.
They kept it to themselves to keep it on the market. Your Honor, members of the jury, Ms. Weir's life is destroyed because Lush fertilizer was negligent. Negligent to properly warn their consumers, negligent for the dangerous effects of the chemical in their product, and negligent to remove the unreasonable risk of Drufo. Lush fertilizer should have taken reasonable care to protect their consumers, but decided against it since it was simply too expensive to ensure their consumers' safety. Let me remind you that the burden of proof in today's case is the preponderance of the evidence, which is simply more likely than not. Lush fertilizer tried to tell you that they followed every rule and precaution, but we've shown by the preponderance of the evidence that Lush fertilizer fell woefully short. Our witnesses proved this negligence. You heard from our expert witness, Dr. Casey Rogers, who testified to the causal link between Drufo and not just cancer, but Ms. Weir's specific cancer, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Dr. Rogers testified that the dangerous effects of Drufo are amplified with adolescence, which is exactly Ms. Weir's circumstance. Dr. Rogers gave her expert opinion that Ms. Weir's was 10 times more likely to develop non-Hodgkin lymphoma due to her exposure to Drufo. In contrast, the defense brought Schuyler Weirs to the stand to tell you that Drufo is safe, but Ms. Weirs has no education, no training, and no knowledge of Drufo except for limited research. So why was she on the stand? It's simple. The defense couldn't get anyone else. The defense couldn't get anyone else to tell you that Drufo is safe because Drufo isn't safe. You also heard from Ms. Carson Durst, who brought it all together for you. Ms. Durst testified to Lush's negligence and the causal link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Ms. Durst testified that Lush knew, ignored, and concealed the carcinogenic dangers of Drufo. Lush fertilizer was made aware of these dangers multiple times, but neglected to do anything about it. Ms. Doncourt also admitted to Lush's negligence. You heard Ms. Doncourt admit to not baking her profit to squeeze Lush's margins for an extra 2% yearly profit. And Drufo isn't safe because of it. Ms. Doncourt tried to tell you that Drufo is safe enough, but brought no studies today to prove it, because Drufo isn't safe. You also heard from Dr. Devin Williams, who's on the product development team at Lush and has a major financial bias in this case. Dr. Williams told you all about the studies that Lush conducted, but are any of those here today in trial? No, because Drufo isn't safe. You also heard from Ms. Dakota Weirs, who told you how her perfect life became a catastrophe due to her cancer. Ms. Weirs told you everything her cancer has taken from her and everything it will continue to take. Ms. Weirs told you she's terrified for the future since she doesn't even know if she has one. Members of the jury, there is no comparative fault in today's case. Lush's fertilizer label only warned of mild eye irritation, not non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Ms. Weirs cannot be at fault for something that the defense willfully omitted and concealed from their safety label. Lush fertilizer kept the knowledge that Drufo is carcinogenic to themselves to keep it on the market. Lush fertilizer had to take one step to bake their product. One step to ensure their consumer safety, but decided against it to pad their pockets. Members of the jury, because Lush Fertilizer's negligence has completely destroyed Ms. Dakota Weir's life, we ask that you find Lush Fertilizer liable for their negligence and for the monetary compensation of $5.2 million for Ms. Dakota Weirs. Thank you.
Thank you. Defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Before I begin, members of the jury, I would just like to thank you for your participation in this trial and the time that you sacrificed for us today. Ruinous condition. Wrong conclusion. Today, you heard the plaintiff's counsel try to blame Lush Fertilizer for her non-Hodgkin lymphoma, despite the lack of scientifically sound evidence. Ms. Weirs has a ruinous condition, but her lawyers and witnesses have come to the wrong conclusion. Good afternoon, members of the jury. My name is Rachel Kidder, and for the next few minutes, I will show you through the evidence how the plaintiff has failed to meet their burden to prove to you that Lush Fertilizer is liable. Plaintiff's counsel hopes you use sympathy for Ms. Weirs or prejudice against Lush Fertilizer when coming to your verdict. But members of the jury, we believe when you apply the science and the law, your verdict must be for the defendant. Let's take a look at the jury instructions. Instruction number 2 states that in order for you to find for Ms. Weirs, you must find that Lush Fertilizer created an unreasonable risk that damaged her, meaning you must find Lush caused her non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Let's take a look at the jury. Blake Doncourt, Dr. Devin Williams, and even Carson Dirks all testified that Lush appropriately studied Drufo according to the law, and the Environmental Protection Agency approved it. What jury instruction number 2 does not state is that Lush had to completely eliminate all risk. It states they had to eliminate unreasonable risk, and that is what they did. Now, there was a study showing that if you give rats enough of a chemical, cancer might be a result. Would it have been reasonable under the law after one study for Lush to completely abandon a product that keeps dangerous nitrates out of our drinking system, a product that protects the health of humans? Probably no agricultural product is guaranteed to be safe. What the law requires is that Lush act reasonably. They did, and nothing you heard in this trial could prove scientifically, as a plaintiff is required to, that Lush Fertilizer caused Ms. Weirs' condition. The plaintiff called 3 witnesses. Certainly, Ms. Weirs was not qualified to and did not testify definitively as to what caused her condition. Their only expert, Dr. Rogers, an entomologist, never even looked into the numerous other chemicals Ms. Weirs used on a daily basis. This failure makes her conclusion one-sided and without any scientific validity. And finally, Carson Dirks was a disgruntled ex-employee who, as opposing counsel took the time to point out, only brought allegations about Drufo 19 years after the fact, after being fired from Lush Fertilizer, after violating a contract with Lush Fertilizer, and after beginning working for Lush's biggest competitor. Jury instruction number 13 states that a manufacturer must warn its users of risk of harm. This is where we must talk about the difficult part of this trial, members of the jury. Lush did warn its users to wear protective clothing and to wear a respirator or an N95 mask. Ms. Weirs was told by her boss to do both of these things. She did neither. It is clear no matter what warnings Lush would have given, she would not have followed them. Under jury instruction number 8, she failed to be reasonably careful as the law required her to be. There are 2 other instructions this court will give you that we believe make the critical difference in this case. The very first instruction requires you to hold the plaintiff to a burden of proof, meaning if the evidence weighs so evenly on either side that you cannot find a preponderance, your verdict must be for the defendant. Jury instruction number 13 states you may not use sympathy for Ms. Weirs, no matter how heartbreaking this condition is, nor prejudice against Lush Fertilizer when coming to your verdict. Here, the evidence is that we just don't know what caused Ms. Weirs' cancer. Therefore, the plaintiff has failed to meet their burden of proof, and your verdict must be for the defendant. Opposing counsel said that Lush kept it to themselves to keep it on the market. Members of the jury, Lush didn't keep anything to themselves. They had user safety recommendations on their packaging. They told people to keep it out of reach of children, of 14-year-olds like Ms. Weirs herself. Every appropriate study done by Lush Fertilizer, every valid study conducted, showed that Drufo was safe. Yes, Ms. Weirs has a ruinous condition, but this lawsuit is the wrong conclusion. Plaintiff's counsel hopes to scare you into holding Lush Fertilizer liable for causing cancer. Members of the jury, we ask that you study the science, apply the law as the judge gives it to you, and do what the legal system in this country was designed to do. Give equal justice to both sides under the law. We ask that you find in favor of Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Rebuttal close.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court.
Yes, counsel. And what is your remaining time?
Your Honor, I believe I have 45 seconds left, if my timekeeper will confirm.
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct.
All right.
Thank you.
You may begin.
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury, the defense told you to examine the science. So why don't we? The plaintiff brought you a credible expert and another person with direct experience with Lush Fertilizer's negligence and a credible study. The defense brought you no studies, no unbiased experts, and another expert who was underqualified. The defense is exactly right. This is a ruinous condition for Ms. Weirs that was caused by Lush Fertilizer's negligence. Find Lush Fertilizer liable for their negligence. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, counsel. All right. At this time, our trial is concluded. Our jury instructions are constructively read to the jury, who are released for deliberation. Perhaps our courtroom monitor can advise us as to next steps at this point.
Yes, so once you finish filling out your score sheets, scoring panelists, I will let you know when they are all submitted. And then once I have all of them, you can start your feedback.
Great, thanks.
All right, so I have received all of the score sheets. So you guys can go ahead and start your feedback.
Well, first of all, great job, everyone. I am super impressed and I want to give you a round of applause here. Really well done. do we want to go through the scoring panelists and we can kind of walk through, how do we want to do this, by witness, or what are your guys' thoughts?
I can start. Just, you know, I'll just be really general, and then maybe folks can get more specific. Really, just to echo what the judge said, really amazing job. You know, I'm sure you've heard this, but often attorneys are not nearly as prepared as you all were. I was like, you know, talking to myself back here, like, whoa, all right, ooh, gosh, they're good, you know. So really good job. All of you are very polished. There was not one of you that was not polished, together, poised. If things weren't going your way, you handled it. Very good at not having a poker face, which is, I mean, at having a poker face. Very good at kind of maintaining your cool, even when maybe the judge wasn't going your way. I liked that. Thank you, Your Honor. You know, it doesn't matter how the judge rules. You have to always maintain professionalism, and you did that. There were times where things got a little heated. I always say you get a lot more with sugar. So, you know, but that, it wasn't a lot, but just, you know, a little, always make sure, you know, I always say that's why there are attorneys, right? To keep things at the up and up professional. Not all attorneys agree with me, but I think that's a very important thing to do, but really tremendous work.
I do want to second that even I mean, I made rulings that were adverse to both sides and you all handled it professionally. Nobody made funny faces or looked mad or like talked back. And that is critical. So, and I was paying attention to that. So really good job to, you know, with respect to, even if it wasn't something that you wanted to hear, you just moved on, you dealt with it, you handled it. So I thought that was really well done. And I thought that you guys did such a great job of making eye contact with, you know, this screen, obviously, but you were persuasive, you were modulating your voices, you were interacting with us. It did not, you know, I've seen attorneys in trials who get up there and just kind of talk in a dead monotone voice, and it's not interactive, it's not persuasive, and none of you did that. So I thought it was extremely effective how you practiced, and obviously you've worked on this, to not be reading your, you know, any note cards, to really be working on interacting with us based upon what you know about the case, and you know a lot about the case. So I appreciate that. I also like how you guys kind of walk the line of argumentative in your openings, but it worked. Like, I didn't have anything that I could have sustained if someone had objected because of how you did it. But it did present a persuasive picture in a very factual way. The only place where I might have veered on that would have been with the burden of proof. But even then, it was towards the end, and it was this part of like the end of that section, and it went right into your request. And I probably would not have sustained that as argument. So I thought that overall your use of themes and slightly argumentative and not crossing the line was well done.
Yeah, I also thought overall was extremely impressed with how everyone sort of performed extremely professionally. And I have a few sort of more specific notes. I thought the opening statements were sort of like appealed to the emotion of the case and were really effective. And then overall, the knowledge of the sort of case facts was really impressive. I think sort of there were certain points, I have this written down for you, Mina, where you were sort of upfront about your expertise and credibility. And I thought whenever a witness sort of came forward and sort of said something like that seemed very honest, despite the fact that it sort of limited their credibility, I thought that was really good and helped. And then I think Peyton and Rachel, you guys were disputing like the exceptions to hearsay. And I'm a law student in my last year of law school, and I'm studying for the bar exam and going through like evidence prep, and I was like, wow, they know it better than I do, and I was really impressed by that. You know, I thought the way you guys handled objections was very professional, and you know, dealing with that showed, you know, a knowledge and sort of like a staying in the moment that was awesome. You know, overall, I was just very impressed, and thought that the knowledge and the work that you guys had put in really came forward, and it was, you know, very difficult to judge. And I don't know how I would have ruled on this case in the real world. It's like right there. So great job.
Okay, well, I agree with everything that's been said. I was very impressed by everyone. I wrote down a few adjectives as I was listening to people. So you guys were calm, you were cool, you moved on when you needed to. You certainly knew the facts of the case. There were a couple of times when a witness might have been difficult, and some of you handled that particularly well by saying, that's a yes, right? And what I wanted to say was, what I was most impressed with was some of the redirect. And you got to the point and you moved on. And I found, based on my experience, that that's where most attorneys fail. You ask too many questions, redirect, but the individuals, every one of you who did redirect on the witness, I thought you got to the point and then you sat down, and that was wonderful. So I just want to congratulate all of you on all the hard work I know that must have gone through, and that each and every one of you did a great job, honestly. So.
I think I'm the last person. I agree with what everybody said prior to me. Very impressed. I feel like everybody should be proud of themselves. I wanted to quickly shout out Chloe's performance. I thought I was really impressed by your performance, and just like the emotion of it, even though that's not applied within the law. So yeah, overall, very impressed with everybody. Just two things to watch and to just be mindful of is you guys came across very, very professional, especially in the courtroom. But as like a juror or as a scoring panelist, you guys should watch your body language and talking with your hands, because at times that became a little distracting. Just something to consider. And then thinking about it, I think that's all I have to say. Great job, guys.
And I think that like the last piece that I have for you has to do with how to handle non-responsive witnesses. And I certainly invite the other scoring panelists to chime in here. But you know, it's harder when you're doing it remotely, because you can't just put your hand up and be like, and that works so well in person. But, you know, it's a little bit different when you're in this remote environment. But it got to the point where you guys were all talking over each other. It was super distracting, and you kind of just started to come across as a bully. And they were fairly meek, nice witnesses. So like it kind of can backfire on you if you look like you're bullying a pretty soft-spoken, sweet appearing witness. So my thoughts on that are, you know, give it a little bit of leeway, like ask the question, and then after the person's finished with their rambling or non-responsive answer within reason, restate. My question was, is the answer yes or no? And then ask it again. And if you still don't get a response, then ask the judge, Your Honor, would the court please direct the witness to respond to the question? And that way you're not over, you know, all yelling at each other and talking over each other. Try to handle it that way and see what you get. But I certainly am interested in how my co-judges have handled that professionally as well.
I agree. When I'm doing a cross-examination, first of all, you know, I always say the focus of the cross-examination is on the attorney, right? And so it's your show, and just make it be your show. And so the witnesses were hard. They were not letting that happen. They kept answering too much, you know? If you make your questions so short and one topic, they shouldn't be able to. And if they do, I mean, you know, that's correct. You just say to the judge, you know, Your Honor, if the court could just please direct the witness. You know, never, ever, ever want to look like you're fighting with a witness. It doesn't even matter if it's the nastiest witness on the face of the earth. It's worse when they're sweet. But you just never, ever want to look like that. You always have to maintain that professionalism.
And when I was taught to kind of make a trail of breadcrumbs with those little questions. Remember how you got those compound objections and I made you break it up? That was actually really powerful the way you did that, because it actually started to increment it towards where you were going. But if you do that throughout with like little short questions where there's obviously no possible way to wiggle out of it, and work that way towards where you're going. Don't ask that final question. They're never going to admit their bias. I mean, you got that, but most witnesses wouldn't have said that. I mean, work your way through these like incremental breadcrumbs along a trail, and then stop right before you get to that last one, but right at the point where it's obvious what the answer would be. And that's what I was taught. And that's actually worked for me pretty well in criminal trials. So I totally agree with what Ms. Wiggins had to say.
I agree as well. You want the judge to be I hate to say this, Judge, you want the judge to be the bad guy, so to speak. So yeah, so if your witness is difficult and you're pounding your head, and the judge isn't helping you, sometimes the judge will help you and say, witness, could you please answer counsel's question? But sometimes they won't. So you want to say, Your Honor, could you please direct the witness to answer my question? So anyway.
And I didn't help you because I don't know what your next judge is going to do, and I wanted to see how you would deal with it. But overall, I think you guys got where you needed to get, and you all did a great job. And I want to just emphasize that because I've seen law school graduates who started in county court at DA's offices who did not do as good a job as either of your teams. So I really want to emphasize that. All right, any questions for us? All right, and I guess we're all done. Thank you all and good luck.
Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.